Chapter 53:30. Martial Granduncle, you've misunderstood. That's just our arrangement for ordinary disciples. Special talents are given special treatment. I'm afraid that Martial Granduncle wouldn't feel at ease to leave them in the hands of others, right? Chun Dongqing said. That's good too. However, they still need an intra-level mentor who will be in charge of teaching them some of the most basic things. Lin Yi nodded. He only wanted Song Lingshan and the others to receive the system training regarding the spiritual sense. As for the other aspects, he really didn't need anyone else. In the entire ancient martial world, there probably wasn't a master as strong as him, a Xinqing stage master, let alone the Qingyun sect of the North Island. Plus, for safety reasons, Lin Yi didn't want to just leave Lingshan and the others to someone else. It was better to move with him before he understood the situation. No problem. As long as it's an order from Martial Granduncle, we'll definitely do our best. We won't let Martial Granduncle down. Chun Dongqing could be said to grant all requests, and he immediately said, Martial Granduncle, we've already prepared your residence. Everyone, please follow me. Oh, don't you need to see the sect leader? And your Grand Elder? Lin Yi said casually. Even though Qin Dongqing, the vice leader, had come out to welcome him with a group of high-level people, there was nothing to be picky about in terms of etiquette. After all, he was just a cheap Grand Uncle Master who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Not a real Grand Uncle Master with evidence, but even so, Lin Yi still had to meet with the current sect leader and the Grand Elder. Only then could he confirm his position as a Grand Uncle. If these two didn't acknowledge him in person, it would be a big problem. Any one of them would be able to make Lin Yi fall from grace and become a complete swindler. Sect leader Hong is currently busy, and as for the Grand Elder, he's in closed-door training and doesn't dare to disturb you. Therefore, I ask for Martial Granduncle's forgiveness. I'm afraid that your meeting with the two of them will have to be delayed for a while. During this time, you can familiarize yourself with our current Green Cloud sect in the North Island. As time passes, there will always be many things that are different from the original. Is there a problem with that? Chen Dongqing said in a sincere tone. Then let's do this. Lin Yi nodded. He understood what the other party meant. It seemed that the Qingyun school still didn't trust him, their senior granduncle, and had been hiding this from them. One would offend others for no reason. It was either for revenge or for benefits, but no matter which of these two reasons, they didn't seem to be related. I can roughly guess a little. Lin Yi's tone was calm. He wasn't surprised at all. He'd thought of countless possibilities before coming here, and this one naturally included. He couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. Nice people were a rare species these days. If the Grand Elder or the sect leader saw Lin Yi, it would be a public acknowledgement of Lin Yi's status as a great Uncle Master unless they turned hostile on the spot. It would be hard for them to turn hostile then, as it would be like slapping their own faces. At the very least, they would lose all their face. At the very worst, the entire North Island's Qingyun sect would become a laughing stock in the ancient martial world, and it might even cause the sect to split. And now, the two of them avoided this problem by not showing up, leaving enough room for them to advance and retreat. After passing through the main hall, Lin Yi and the group were led by Qian Dongqing to a steep part of the mountain, and the scene in front of them made their eyes light up. Under a strangely shaped eagle beak peak, an ancient hut stood next to a broken cliff. The soaring eaves and cliffs were stacked on top of each other. This scene could only be described with one word. Overlord covers the top, and the sky lamp hangs upside down. The other higher-ups and disciples had all stopped. Only two people came with Lin Yi and the others. One was the vice leader, Chen Dongqing, and the other was Xianijia. This is the residence that we have prepared for you and your disciples. In terms of scenery, this is the best place in the entire North Island. What do you think? Chun Dongqing smiled apologetically. Lin Yi looked at the big red words carved on the cliff at the entrance, and his lips curled up. A single step to the heavens? That's right. This place is called the Ascending Heaven Cliff. Only those of high status can enter, so there are usually no disciples to disturb us, so it's relatively quiet and the scenery is excellent. After discussing it, we can't find a better place to live than this in the entire Green Cloud Mountain. I hope it will satisfy Martial Granduncle. Chun Dongqing said with a smile. I'm very satisfied. Lin Yi smiled as he glanced at Xianijia. The guy's expression hadn't been right since they arrived, as if he had something to say but didn't dare to. That's good. We won't disturb senior granduncle's rest then. I'll come to pay my respects to you again tomorrow morning. Goodbye. Chon Dongqing saluted. Take care. Linny nodded. Chon Dongqing immediately turned to leave. However, before he left, he called out to Xian Ijia. Elder Xian, please follow me. The Elder Council is still waiting for you to make a summary report on your experience in the secular world and the primordial trial. Don't make everyone wait too long. Yes. Xian Ijia quickly replied and turned to Lin Yi. Senior granduncle, disciple will take his leave first. You take care. With that, Xian Ijia left with Chan Dongqing, leaving only Lin Yi and the others at the cliff. Chuntian pinched his chin. Boss, don't you think that Xian Ijia was acting a little weird just now? It's not just him. I think everyone here is acting weird. Ziyu pouted. Also, I think this place is a little weird. Ling Shan added. Hey. Are you guys oversensitive? Everything's weird. Chikuan and Chiju looked at each other. Linny looked at everyone and finally nodded. Your feeling is right. There is something wrong with this place. What's wrong? Everyone looked at each other and quickly asked. They just felt that something was strange, but they couldn't tell what was wrong. We're under house arrest. Lin Yi's words made everyone jump, and Ziyu quickly looked outside. There wasn't a single guard around, and it looked like they could just walk out at will. Why was he under house arrest? Boss, we have no grudges with him in the past, and this time we came to join the North Island's Green Cloud School. Why did they inexplicably put us under house arrest? Chintian asked. Confused, the others were also confused. Unless they were crazy, no? Chapter 53:31. Is there really no way out of this place? Ziyu still didn't believe it. You can try. Lin Yi picked up a stone and gave it to her, and she threw it in the direction they came from. There was nothing in front of them, but the stone bounced back. Why would I? Everyone was stunned. A formation. There's a formation set up here, and it doesn't look like an ordinary formation, Linny said. He'd sensed the formation the moment he'd arrived, but he didn't dare to get angry with Ling Shan and the others. After all, this was the Green Cloud sect on the North Island. If they fell out with Lin Yi, none of them would be able to leave, and their lives would be in danger. It was better to take things one step at a time. Ziyu didn't give up. She picked up a rock and tried everywhere, even the cliff and the top. It turned out to be an invisible prison with no blind spots, trapping everyone and not giving them any room to escape. Ascending Heaven Cliff. Isn't this King replica of the Cliff of Reflection? Chikuan only realized now that deputy sect leader also said that only those of high status can enter. It turns out that he's such a high status, a smiling tiger. Wu Changtian smiled bitterly. He thought Chen Dongqing was a good person, and it was rare for a vice sect leader to lower himself like this. Now that he knew the truth, he started to cry. Then what should we do? Ling Shan and the others all looked at Lin. They were still in the middle of their first world crossing experience, and they didn't think they'd be in danger so soon. Cold. Linny smiled nonchalantly. Huh. Everyone was confused from what they knew of Linny. He wasn't the kind of person who would just swallow his anger. What did he mean by cold? Since they want us to stay, we'll stay. No one will disturb us, and we can cultivate in peace. We'll just treat it as closed-door cultivation. Linny was surprisingly open about it this time. Everyone was a little unwilling, but since Linny said so, they didn't object. Linny started to meditate first, and the others also went to their own rooms. No matter where they were, strength was king. They knew that they were too weak, which was why they were in this situation. If they weren't at the peak of the early foundation stage, but were golden core stage masters, would the Green Cloud sect dare to treat them like this? He had to become stronger. Technique, his hand had become a killer move. But Linny knew that it was far from its full power. Only then could he live on with his head held high. The experience in the trial grounds had already made them deeply aware of this, and now, they were experiencing it even more deeply because of Lin Yi's existence. They had the best training environment in the world, and none of them lacked talent. The only thing they lacked was motivation. Without too much external pressure these years, they were more or less slacking off, but now that they were in the Qingyun school, they were under house arrest. The pressure was overwhelming. Lin smiled, thinking that it was a blessing in disguise. Everything else aside, the cliff was a good place for practicing. Even if the qi wasn't that dense, it was the environment. The state of one's mind was born from the heart, and the environment would naturally affect one's mental state. Open-minded people rarely encountered bottlenecks, and this invisible influence was even more important than the qi. Besides, Lin's pills made up for it. So what if there was a little bit of qi? Everyone was working hard, and Lin was no exception. He was using the spiritual roots to train his spirit bit by bit. The whole process was extremely painful, but Lin enjoyed it because he knew that after the pain, there would be rewards. With every 15 minutes, Lin could feel his spirit getting stronger. This wasn't just a quantitative recovery and accumulation, it was also a qualitative training, especially the latter, which was a pleasant surprise to Lin because of the projection. Lin's entire essence spirit strength couldn't be compared to when he was on Tianjia Island. If he was originally 10,000% of a Xinqing stage essence spirit, then after the projection's weakening, he was at most 10% of a Xinqing stage essence spirit. Not only was the quantity greatly reduced, but even the quality had dropped to a certain extent. However, with the help of the spiritual roots, Lin believed that even if he couldn't recover much in terms of quantity, in terms of quality, it wouldn't take long for him to return to the sky-class island level, and his spirit would reach the true level of a Xinqing stage. In fact, he might even be stronger than when he was on sky-class island. Other than training his spirit, Lin's other core training was the soul hooking hand. His experience with the 9 infants made him realize that he'd been on the wrong path all this time. From the moment his essence spirit was projected into the mortal world, the first thing Lin did was to form his essence spirit. Everything he did after that revolved around the essence spirit, constantly raising the level of his essence spirit until he could once again use the killing intent of the 5 elements and 8 trigrams, as well as super killer moves like lightning burial. This was Lin's original thought process until he encountered the bottleneck of the Foundation establishment. He had been persisting in this line of thought. Later, he hit a wall and was forced to start to explore all kinds of spiritual awareness skills. However, until he faced the 9 infants, he did not really realize it, and now, Lin finally realized that he'd made a huge mistake. He was only a spirit, and the spirit was the foundation. Pursuing the strength of the spirit was completely putting the cart before the horse. Even if he trained until he died, he wouldn't be able to break through that invisible barrier. The only way was to focus on the spirit. There were 2 paths to spirit cultivation. One was to increase the level of the spirit, which was what Lin was doing with the spiritual roots. The other was spirit techniques, and the only thing Lin could use in this area was the soul-snatching hand. It wasn't something that could be done overnight, required a lot of effort, but the hand of soul devouring still had room for improvement with Lin's level of insight and understanding, ever since he'd combined it with the 9 neonates engulfing. Chapter 53-32. From the results of his test with Xue Jianfeng, the soul-evoking hands and feet could take down any opponent under the original level. The price Lin had to pay was nothing more than some spirit energy. As long as he had time to recover after the process, he could completely recover with the help of the spirit grass. In fact, if he wanted to, he could even skip the process of recovery because he could just devour his spirit. Unlike the soul-snatching hand, the primordial spirit could directly use the other party as its own tonic. After devouring, not only would it not consume its own spiritual energy, but it could also grow by a large amount. This was also the root of the 9 neonates' joy. However, Lin wasn't used to this method. First, he felt that it was too inhumane, like an uncivilized beast. Second, he felt that there were too many hidden dangers. Methods that were too fast usually had many hidden dangers. The 9 neonate relied on its 9 heads to devour all kinds of spirits, but if Lin dared to do that, he might suffer a mental breakdown soon, or even a soul collapse. From the perspective of a conspiracy theory, the 9 neonate was willing to tell Lin the essence spirit devouring technique so easily because it wanted to trick Lin. If Lin couldn't resist the temptation of fast cultivation like it, he would have been tricked into a bloody mess. He didn't want to use it on anyone unless he had no other choice. He wanted to do it step by step and slowly, without the need to consume. The soul catcher hand was the only way Lin Yi could attack his soul. Its importance was undoubted, and what he needed to do now was to further explore and improve the power of the soul catcher hand. After all, in the ancient pugilistic world, he didn't just have to face a peak Jindan like Xue Jianfeng. He had to face nascent soul-old monsters from all the sections if he wanted the soul-snatching hand to be his trump card. He had to at least be able to deal with nascent soul-old monsters. Lin Yi and the others started training as usual. At the same time, Qin Dongqing, the vice leader of the Qingyun sect, didn't just sit around. He left Xi and Ejia behind and went to the top of the mountain. For all disciples, the summit was a forbidden zone that they absolutely could not approach. Were springing up like mushrooms after the rain. Any one of them could make the entire new generation of the North Island pale in comparison. If this continued, the North Island was not far from its decline. Your grandson will not let you down, ancestor. Qin Dongqing's eyes were very determined. He was not shouldering his own honor, but the fate of the entire Qin family of the North Island. For this, he would do anything. By the way, speaking of successors, Dongqing, you're already the vice sect leader of a high and powerful sect, but you only have one son and two daughters, and their aptitudes are not good. You have to quickly find a few more outstanding female disciples. Remember, under these circumstances, having children is more important than anything else. Qianjia warned if it wasn't for his old age, he would have done this himself. Unfortunately, even though he could maintain his vitality by relying on his powerful strength at the Yuanying stage, he had long lost his fertility. This was one of the few key abilities that cultivators could not touch. If not for this, whether it was the Sky-class island or the ancient martial world, the powerful cultivators would have had children all over the world. Their long lifespans of thousands of years were enough for them to give birth to an entire sect. Even the higher-ups of the sect, including the sect master, had to report in advance if they wanted to ascend to the summit. This was because this territory only belonged to one person, Grand Elder Qianjia. However, Qin Dongqing was not one of them. He was the only exception in the entire Qingyun school of the Northern Island because he was Qianjia's great-grandson. There were no luxurious buildings on the top of Qingyun Mountain. There was only a simple wooden house. At this moment, an old man was sitting on a rock next to him. With his breathing, the surrounding clouds were either fast or slow, constantly changing into various mysterious patterns. It was hard to understand, but it was very powerful. Old ancestor. Qin Dongqing stood behind Qianjia respectfully. After a moment, Qianjia stopped breathing and slowly opened his eyes. How is it? As you ordered, I've placed Lin Yi and his men under house arrest on Ascending Cliff. They didn't suspect anything at all. Their alertness is really bad. Qin Dongqing's lips curled into a mocking smile. That's a good thing. It's good to be a little slow. After all, he's a legendary martial granduncle from the far ancient times. If he makes a scene before he's verified, it'll be more or less troublesome. Chunju nodded slightly. Do you really want to verify it? Qin Dongqing asked with a deeper meaning in his words. What do you think? Chunju laughed and looked at Qin Dongqing with a probing gaze. Investigate. Not only do we have to investigate, we have to do a thorough investigation. Qin Dongqing said after some thought. Oh? If it is verified that there is such a thing, then the sect will have one more supreme ancient martial granduncle. Wouldn't that be the same as having one more retired emperor? Do you think that this old man's life is too free? Chunjo said with a smile that was not a smile. No, since it's a grand investigation, the result is naturally already decided. In your grandson's opinion, rather than handling this matter coldly, it's better to make a big deal out of it, and then come to a conclusion when the time is right. Only this way can we truly convince everyone, Qin Dongqing said with confidence. Public opinion is meant to be manipulated. In terms of manipulating people's hearts, I'm afraid no one in the entire North Island's Green Cloud School is your opponent. It's not in vain that I helped you to the position of deputy sect leader. Chunju nodded in satisfaction. I'm not very talented. Even after exhausting all the family resources, I can only barely reach the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm. With this strength alone, I'm far from being able to support the great cause of our family. So I can only take the side path and spend more effort in other aspects, hoping that I can live up to the great expectations of the ancestor. Chun Dongqing said humbly. That's right. In the world of cultivation, strength is the king. It's a pity that our Qin family has been lacking in talent for several generations, and we haven't been able to find a talented child, so we can only put all the burden on you. If you don't have enough strength, you can make up for it with tactics. So, Dongqing, you have to hold on until a new successor appears in our family. Chenjiu said with a sigh. The lack of talent was not only a problem for the Qin family, but it was also a problem for the entire North Island's Green Cloud sect, and even the entire North Island. Otherwise, someone like Liang Zhu would not have become the sect's eldest senior brother. In contrast, the other islands, especially the Middle Island, were full of talents, all kinds of shocking geniuses. Chapter 53:33. But I really can't find any talented female disciples on the North Island. If it's on the Middle Island, I don't have that much face just by relying on myself. Qin Dongqing smiled bitterly. He had put in a lot of effort in this area. Both Long Long of Snow Sword Sect and Duanmu Yu of Leaf Spirit Sect were very ideal marriage partners. However, the problem was that both women were genius disciples who received a lot of attention from their respective sections. Although Qin Dongqing was the deputy sect leader of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, and his status was high enough, it was a pity that his strength was only in the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm. More importantly, he was taking in concubines and not officially marrying them, who would inexplicably send their most outstanding genius female disciple to an outsider as a concubine. The Snow Sword Sect and Spirit Leaf Sect were not fools. If it really doesn't work, this old master will have to personally make a trip. Chunjiu furrowed his brows. Although he said that, he wasn't very confident about this kind of thing. There was only an exchange of benefits between sections. If you want others to give you their most outstanding genius female disciple, you must pay the corresponding price. The small family background of the Northern Islands Qingyun School couldn't withstand the turmoil. Please don't be rash, ancestor. The Grand Elder of Xuanji sect met with an accident because he went out rashly. You are the stabilizing force. You must not act rashly unless it is absolutely necessary. It is not worth the risk for such a small matter like this, Chun Dongqing quickly advised. Then, Chenjiu was also a little hesitant. Although nascent soul-old monsters were top-notch existences in the small Jianghu of the immemorial era, there were also differences between them. They were not foolproof. And to destroy a powerful sect, one must start from nascent soul-old monsters. Because of this, the Xuanji sect was removed from the list of the 10 small sects and families. With the previous example in front of them, they had to be careful. Actually, I have an idea, Chun Dongqing suddenly said. Oh. Chunjiu glanced at him, indicating for him to continue. Tile granduncle. Then I can't go out, Linny said. As a mid-stage Golden Core practitioner, as the vice sect leader, Chun Dongqing realized that he couldn't even look Lin Yi in the eye. The aura that Lin Yi was unconsciously exuding made him feel very nervous. Like an old farmer meeting an emperor, he didn't know what to do. What was this guy's background? Chun Dongqing could not help but feel apprehensive. Even when he was facing a nascent soul-stage-old monster, he had never felt this way. Could it be that the other party was even more terrifying than the nascent soul-stage-old monster? How is that possible? Chun Dongqing immediately threw this ridiculous thought to the back of his mind. He thought to himself that this was probably because the other party was a primordial spirit. After all, it was rare to see a primordial spirit that existed alone. He had never been in such close contact with a primordial spirit before. No, you've misunderstood me. This one step to the sky formation actually has the ability to distinguish people. As long as you have the identity token of the sect, you can enter and leave freely. Chun Dongqing explained. Linny understood. This was what he'd been wondering about. Everyone was trapped, but only Chun Dongqing could come and go as he pleased. It must have been because of his ID. Then when can you give me my identity waste token? Linny asked. This may require Marshal Granduncle's patience to wait for a while. The identity waste tag is not an ordinary object because there are all kinds of restrictions in our sect, big and small. The identity waste tag directly determines whether you have the right to enter and leave freely. Therefore, the production and distribution of each identity waste tag is very cautious. With Martial Granduncle's extraordinary status, the authority is naturally the highest level in the sect, and special affairs need to be approved by both Grand Elder and the sect leader. Even I, the deputy sect leader, don't dare to make the decision. Chun Dongqing's attitude was very sincere. There were 2 female disciples among the 5 disciples that Lin Yi brought with him today, and I heard from Xianijia that they were very eye-catching in the test. They're pretty talented, but they're a bit weak. Chun Dongqing said, strength is not a problem. The key is talent and foundation. In that case, you can take them as concubines. If they can give birth to a talented child for our Qin family, it will be a profit. If not, there is no loss. Qinjiu said casually. In the eyes of a grand elder like him, 2 mere female disciples were nothing at all. With his approval, would they dare to resist? Moreover, for most women, being able to be taken into the room of a big shot like Chun Dongqing was a good thing that they could not ask for more. It did not matter even if she became a concubine. This was like flying up a branch and becoming a phoenix. I'm a little worried about Lin Yi's attitude. He's very close to the 2 female disciples. I'm afraid he won't agree so easily. Chun Dongqing was put in a difficult position. After all, the other party was a Taigu martial granduncle in name. Even if he was the sect's deputy sect leader, he could not disobey him in public unless he publicly announced that the other party was a swindler. It doesn't matter. Since he has joined the Green Cloud School on the North Island, he must follow the rules of the school. Even if he is the real martial granduncle, he can't override the rules and be divided. I don't think I need to waste my breath on such a small trick, right? Chunjiu reminded. Your grandson understands. Chun Dongqing laughed. The next morning, Chun Dongqing arrived at Heaven Ascension Cliff early. He was still smiling and humble. I pay my respects to Martial Granduncle. Is Martial Granduncle used to this place? Chun Dongqing asked with a smile. It's all right. The place is quite good, but it's not very ventilated. Lin Yi stretched lazily. His spirit was a bit tired after a whole day of training, and he needed to relax. With such a wide field of vision, does Martial Granduncle still feel stuffy? Chun Dongqing pretended to be surprised. Would you feel breathless if I put you in a cage? Lin Yi asked. Oh, so that's what Martial Granduncle was referring to. I was too careless and forgot to explain yesterday. I hope Martial Granduncle can forgive me. Realization dawned on Chun Dongqing's face. Ling Shan and the others, who were standing behind Lin Yi, looked at each other teasingly. With this guy's acting skills, it would be a waste if he didn't go into acting. He'd be a movie king otherwise. Then, can Deputy Sect Leader Qin explain it to us? Lin Yi said faintly. Yes, Martial Granduncle, you may not know, but the name of the cliff is derived from a formation called the One Step to the Sky Formation. This is the most profound formation of our Qingyun school in the North Island. Before the successive sect leaders succeed the position, they have to cultivate in seclusion for 3 years. Only after observing and comprehending can they come out of seclusion. Ordinary disciples don't have the qualifications even if they want to come. Chun Dongqing smiled apologetically. So you're saying that you're going to make me the sect master? Lin Yi raised an eyebrow. Chun Dongqing obviously choked for a moment. This fellow was not playing by the rules. He could only force a smile and say, not really. This is the most special place in the entire North Island's Green Cloud School. We arranged for you to stay here to show our respect to Mar. Chapter 53:34. In other words, if the 2 of them don't show up, I'll have to be trapped here forever? Lin Yi laughed. These guys had found a good excuse to put him under house arrest. For the time being, I can only ask Martial Granduncle to suffer a little. Fortunately, the scenery here is unique, and it's convenient for Martial Granduncle to cultivate. This time will be over with a short closed-door cultivation. Chun Dongqing's attitude was still very humble. My identity waste token needs to be handled on a special occasion. Okay, I can accept this statement, but what about theirs? It can't be that the Grand Elder and the sect leader have to personally come out, right? Lin Yi said as he pointed at Ling Shan and the others. There's no need for that. I was just about to discuss it with Marshall Granduncle today. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the higher-ups of the other sections. These disciples you brought are all extremely talented people. If we just send an entrance instructor to teach them the basics, it would be too much of a waste of talent. Therefore, we've decided to do this on a special basis. We're preparing to do a spirit root test for everyone, and then arrange a corresponding entrance instructor for each person based on the test results. What do you think about having Senior Granduncle personally teach me after I've learned it? Chun Dongqing asked Lin Yi, Ling Shan, and the others all looked at each other, confused. To be honest, this was a good plan. If they weren't under house arrest, they would have agreed right away. But now? They had to think about if there was some kind of conspiracy behind this. It sounds good, but I have to discuss it with each of them. Linny said, "It's fine. It'll take 3 days to make an identity waste token anyway. You have enough time to think about it." Chun Dongqing did not force her and immediately said, "Oh, there's another thing. Marshall Granduncle, you gave us the complete version of the Clear Sky Heart formula before, which is a great blessing for our entire Green Cloud School on the Northern Island. I'll take the liberty to ask on behalf of the other high-level officials, Marshall Granduncle, can you also write down the other lost mental cultivation methods and martial arts techniques as soon as possible to benefit the vast number of Green Cloud School disciples?" "Sure, I'll write it down as soon as I have time," Linny replied. "Then I'll have to trouble Senior Granduncle," gritted his teeth and said, "Deputy Sect Leader Chan held a special elder meeting this morning. He publicly suggested to set up a special investigation team to investigate your background." "Investigate my background?" In other words, they still don't believe that I'm from the Blue Cloud School of the North Island? Then why did you invite me here? Lin Yi teased. Xian Ijia blushed with shame. As an elder of the sect, he was also qualified to attend the meeting. When he heard this, he was dumbfounded. He had finally managed to invite the Grand Uncle Master back, and the first thing he did was not to let the Grand Uncle Master reintegrate into the sect, but to publicly propose to investigate the other party's background. Was this something a human would do? Did he say how to investigate? Lin Yi asked curiously. Although every proper sect would have a list of disciples of the past generations, it had been more than 1,000 years since the ancient times. After such a long time, who knew how many turmoils and storms had happened during this period? Even the most basic and important Blue Cloud Heart formula of the Blue Cloud School on the Northern Island had become incomplete, let alone a list. Even if there was a list, it would at most be an incomplete copy. How could they verify his true identity as a cheap Marshall Granduncle? "I still have other sect affairs to deal with, so I'll take my leave first. I'll come again another day to pay my respects." Chun Dongqing immediately took his leave. "What do you guys think this guy is up to?" Chun Tian pinched his chin as he watched Dongqing leave. "It's definitely not a good medicine," Qikuan and Qijiu said in unison. Yes, I hate this kind of pretentious big-tailed wolf the most," Ziyu said, gritting her teeth. "Looking at his behavior, I think he's using peaceful means before resorting to force. He'll use the soft approach first, and if the soft approach doesn't work, he'll use the hard approach." "What do you think, Linny?" Lingshan said. "That's right. When his patience runs out, he'll come at us the hard way." Linny nodded. He could guess that the other party was after the Qingyun sex arts and techniques in his head. As for what else they wanted, he couldn't tell yet. Linny could give the practitioners arts, but he'd have to decide when and how he'd give them. He wouldn't just give them out like that, especially in a situation like this. He had to make a big deal out of it. "Then what should we do?" Chun Tian and the others asked. "We'll deal with whatever comes our way. Let them do their thing first." Linny smiled nonchalantly. Even the Sky-class island couldn't stop him, and he couldn't do anything in the ancient martial world? Was that even possible? Linny didn't care at all. It felt like sending a top student who had just finished his college entrance exams to a high school exam. He wouldn't be Linny if he didn't even have that much confidence. "That's good." Everyone nodded with a smile, each one more relaxed than the last. Since Linny was here, what were they afraid of? Just as everyone was about to go back to their cultivation, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of them. It was an old acquaintance, Xian Ijia. He looked around carefully to make sure there was no one else before entering the room. He turned to Lin Yi guiltily. Martial granduncle, I've caused you to suffer. Nothing. By the way, why are you so sneaky? Linny was a little surprised. Exionegia was only an early Golden Core practitioner and didn't seem to have anything special about him, but he was an elder of a sect. With their past relationship in the common world, it was only natural for him to come and visit Lin Yi. Why was he so sneaky? There's no other way. If Deputy Sect Leader Chun finds out about this, I'll probably be locked up. Exionegia smiled bitterly. Why? Lin Yi, Ling Shan, and the others looked at each other. Because. Exionegia found it hard to say. He'd supported Lin Yi's decision to come to the North Island's Green Cloud sect, but he didn't think that this would happen after he'd brought Lin Yi and the others back. From a certain point of view, this was a complete scam. He didn't have the face to face Lin Yi and the others. It's okay. Tell me what's going on, Lin Yi said with a wave of his hand. He didn't blame Exionegia after all. This wasn't something he could decide on his own. He needed to know what the higher-ups of the North Island's Qingyun school were planning. He wasn't scared of anything, but it was better to be prepared than not, Exionegia. Chapter 53-35. Not yet. We've only set up a 3-person investigation group. We'll have to discuss the specific investigation method further. Exionegia laughed bitterly. In fact, in his opinion, this kind of investigation was completely unnecessary, and no matter what, Lin Yi gave him the original version of the technique. This was an undeniable fact, and that alone was enough to give him a proper title as a Grandmaster. What's more, the development momentum of the Green Cloud School in the North Island had been extremely sluggish in recent years. Now that the Taigu Martial Granduncle had returned, it was an encouraging shot for all the disciples in the school. Even if it was purely for the sake of morale, the identity of the Martial Granduncle must not be doubted. Why couldn't Qin Dongqing and the rest understand such a simple logic? Hee, these people are just knocking on the mountain to scare the tiger. Lin Yi immediately understood Qin Dongqing's intentions. To a cheap uncle like him, the sick was like a sharp sword hanging over his head. If he knew what was good for him, he'd still be the ancient Granduncle Master that everyone respected. If he didn't, he'd become a scammer that everyone wanted to kill. Lin Yi didn't doubt the man's ability to prove that he was a charlatan at all. Even if he was a true martial granduncle of the Blue Cloud sect, Qin Dongqing could easily label him as a charlatan. What do you mean? Exionegia was still in the dark and didn't know how to react. Nothing. By the way, since you're going to investigate me, shouldn't you avoid arousing suspicion at this time? Lin Yi said. Exionegia hesitated for a moment. He didn't have much ambition, and his strength wasn't outstanding among the sect elders. At this time, the best choice was to be honest and pretend not to see anything. Senior Granduncle, you were strongly recommended by this disciple. I really didn't expect this to be the result. I really feel bad. There's still more. Lin Yi just looked at him. He'd known Exionegia for a while now, and he knew that while the guy was honest, he had a black-bellied side to him. If there weren't any other important reasons, the guy would have chosen to protect himself instead of taking the risk to come here and tell Lin Yi. Also, Ijia had no choice but to come to Lin Yi. He didn't know what to do, but he'd have to see if Lin Yi had any ideas. Now, the Green Cloud School in the North Island has become Qin Dongqing's sole authority? Lin Yi asked, deep in thought. Basically, no one dares to refute his words now. Exionegia said with a bitter smile. It seems that the sect leader Hong you mentioned is not very capable. Lin Yi frowned. As a sect leader, he was supposed to be followed by the higher-ups of other sections. Normally, even if something happened, there should at least be some loyal followers. But this guy here just surrendered as soon as something happened to Lin Yi, especially when Qin Dongqing was only a mid-Golden Core deputy sect leader. It was nice to say that he was not capable. To put it bluntly, he was incompetent. Exionegia was a little embarrassed as he weakly explained. In fact, you can't blame sect leader Hong for not being able to control the overall situation. The main reason is that Qin Dongqing's background is too deep. The Qin family of the North Island has always been one of the top aristocratic families in the North Island. Back then, the Green Cloud sect of the North Island was barely able to survive by relying on the Qin family. Not to mention that the Grand Elder is the previous head of the Chen family. He is a top figure in the North Island who can rally hundreds of people with a single call. Even sect leader Hong can't handle him. I heard something after I came back. I thought it was very strange. Maybe it has something to do with you, Grand Uncle Master. Xian Ejia said hesitantly. What is it? Linny asked. Sect leader Hong is in trouble. Xian Ejia's tone was heavy as he spoke, but Linny didn't seem to care. When I first brought your matter back to the sect, there was a huge dispute among the higher-ups of the sect. Sect leader Hong and deputy sect leader Chun had a fierce quarrel. Sect leader Hong, like me, raised both hands in favor of welcoming you back to the sect. I thought that since the final conclusion was reached, sect leader Hong would definitely be the leader, but I didn't expect it to be completely different. Continue. Linny revealed an interested expression. He didn't know that there was such an inside story. From what he heard, it meant that the sect leader Hong he had never met was on his side. I heard that, in name, sect leader Hong visited the sects on the outer island, but in fact, he never left the North Island. Xian Ejia said. How did they know? Linny was suspicious there wasn't any customs in this place, and they could just get out on an aerial spirit beast. Who knew if sect leader Hong really made it out? Because someone saw the corpse of the sect leaders mount with their own eyes. However, they were killed afterwards and all traces were erased. However, some news still leaked out. Xian Ejia said grimly. You mean sect leader Hong was killed because he supported me? Linny felt that there was something wrong with this logic even if it was as Xian Ejia said, and the sect leader Hong he'd never met was on his side. It was just a matter of attitude, not life or death moreover. How could it be so easy to deal with a sect leader? You can't put it that way, but there's still a connection. Xian Ejia knew that this statement wouldn't stand up to scrutiny, but sect leader Hong was his backer. The reason he had been able to become an elder in the secular world was because of sect leader Hong's strong recommendation. Otherwise, how could he have been able to get such a glorious job with his mediocre strength? Now that something had happened to sect leader Hong, the attitudes of the higher-ups who used to follow sect leader Hong's orders had changed. When Chen Dongqing mentioned investigating Lin Yi's identity in the elders' meeting, no one stood up to object. This in itself was enough to explain the problem. Other people might be able to play it safe and be a fence-sitter, but Xian Ejia couldn't. Lin Yi, this Taigu great-uncle master, was practically welcomed into the house by him. He was naturally labeled as someone close to Lin Yi. If he decided to play it safe now, he'd be the laughingstock of the entire sect, and he'd offend Lin Yi. Other people didn't know Lin Yi's strength and thought that he was just a peak foundation stage soul. But Xian Ejia knew that this Taigu wasn't as simple as he appeared to be. He was an unfathomable existence, and so, Xian. Chapter 53-36. The Chun family of the North Island? So there are two groups of people in the sect? Lin Yi blinked. A sect was a sect, and an aristocratic family was an aristocratic family. Generally, they did not interfere with each other's business. It was rare for there to be a situation where people in the North Island's Green Cloud sect were mixed in, because this would inevitably lead to the formation of gangs. Just like the current Green Cloud sect of the North Island, a mere mid-Jindan stage could sit in the position of deputy sect leader, and even the entire Elder Council could become his sole authority. It was simply a joke if it was said out loud. Yes, one is the Chun family faction. These people are either direct or collateral descendants of the Qin family on the North Island, or have inextricable connections with the Qin family. There aren't many of them, but they are very united and powerful. The representatives are the Grand Elder and the Deputy Sect Leader, Chen Dongqing. Xian Ejia explained, even the strongest nascent soul was the previous head of House Chen. So naturally, this House Chen's faction was extremely powerful. Linny wasn't surprised by this and continued to ask, what about the other faction? The other faction is the local faction. Normally, as long as the disciples have no relationship with the Chun family of the North Island, they are classified as the local faction. The majority of them are from the local faction, but the relationship is very loose. So, it is usually fine, but once something happens, they become a pile of loose sand. The representative is sect leader Hong Zijuan. Xian Ejia said with a bitter smile. No wonder. Realization dawned on Lin. The local factions were a pile of loose sand to begin with, and now that even their representative Hong Zijuan was in trouble, it was understandable why they'd become like this. Senior Granduncle, Deputy Sect Leader Chun is coming. You have to be on guard. Xianejia said carefully. Oh? How do we defend against it? Linny said. Deputy Sect Leader Chun has the support of the entire Qin family faction. Stepped in. By the way, how much do you know about this formation? Can you tell me? Linny suddenly said. If he could figure out the principle and characteristics of this formation, he might be able to force his way in and out even without the waist tag. He could come in and out as he pleased, and it wouldn't be easy for Chen Dongqing to use this to restrict him anymore. Senior Granduncle, although I am also an elder, my status and level are not high enough to spy on the core secrets of the sect's important formations, Xianejia said with a bitter smile. I see. Linny was a little disappointed. However, this one step to heaven formation is our sect's most famous formation. From the first day I joined, I've been hearing all sorts of discussions about it. I dare not say that I know its core secrets, but I do have some understanding of it. Xianejia changed the topic. Then why are you still keeping me in suspense? Linny rolled his eyes at him. Haha. Xianejia laughed awkwardly. He was a careful person, and he wouldn't spread rumors unless there was concrete evidence. He just didn't want Linny to think that he was useless, so he decided to come up with some unproven rumors. One step to heaven formation. There are basically two explanations for the origin of this formation's name. One is that thousands of years ago, there was an unknown ordinary disciple in our sect who made a mistake and was punished with confinement. At that time, this was just an ordinary back cliff. Unexpectedly, in just 3 years, that disciple suddenly appeared out of nowhere and directly became an invincible top-notch existence. With his own strength, he turned our sect into the number 1 sect in the ancient times without any suspense. That was our sect's most glorious period. After that, the back cliff was renamed Ascending Heaven Cliff. Xianejia said, if he does something bad to you, you won't be able to guard against it. Xianejia looked at Lin Yi's face and gathered his courage. Senior Granduncle, you gave us the original version of the Qingyun heart calming formula. By right, based on this point alone, your status should be impeccable. However, after all, you have left the Qingyun school on the North Island for too long. Most of the people in the school are only curious about you, but they don't have much sense of identity with you. Once Deputy Sect Leader Chun really makes trouble, you will be very passive. Continue. Linny said faintly. Xianejia swallowed nervously. He wasn't good at instigating others, but he had no choice but to do so. Yes, if you want to take root in the sect, you need a group of loyal fans. Now that sect leader Hong's whereabouts are unknown and the local sects have no leader, you need to stand up and cheer for them. Otherwise, if this continues, the Green Cloud sect in the North Island may become the Chen family in the North Island. You want me to replace sect leader Hong? Linny looked at him strangely. No. This disciple didn't mean it that way. Xianejia hurriedly denied it. As soon as Hong Zijuan was in trouble, this underling of his incited someone else to replace him. If he really did that, he would become a complete traitor. He hurriedly explained, what I mean is that the local faction, under the leadership of sect leader Hong, was inclined to you. So it is entirely possible for you to stand up and lead the way. As for sect leader Hong, I will spare no effort to find him. If I can find him, that would be great. But if I can't, Xianejia didn't finish his sentence. But his meaning was clear. Lin Yi's lips curled up. Xianejia's words reminded him of what Liu Bei had said to Zhuge Liang when he entrusted the city to him. If the sun can be supplemented, he can be supplemented. If he is not talented, the monarch can take it himself. With Lin Yi's level, he didn't really care about fighting and scheming with people from the Green Cloud sect on the North Island. But it looked like they were going to make it hard for him and Lingshan to live in peace. He might as well go with the flow. I didn't expect you to be so bold. Linny smiled. He'd thought that Xianejia was a good man who'd protect himself, but he'd been quite decisive this time. He knew that Qin Dongqing wanted to mess with him, but he still dared to tell on him. The person in charge was a grand elder, after all. If it were someone else in Exionegia's position, they might not have had the courage to do this. Martial Granduncle, you're too kind. Exionegia smiled honestly as he looked at Lin Yi's face nervously. Then what do you mean? To be honest, your suggestion is not bad, Lin Yi admitted, but spread his hands. But I'm trapped here and can't get out. What's the use? Exionegia was dumbfounded. He was so focused on persuading Lin Yi, but he forgot that Lin Yi and the others had been locked up from the moment they. Chapter 53:37. You want me to prove it myself? Lin Yi smiled at the word. It sounded reasonable. If he couldn't prove his identity with solid evidence, then the other party would be right in front of him. It's totally unwarranted. Isn't the parallel art of green cloud evidence? Grandmaster, aren't the mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills you just gave them evidence? Those are the ironclad evidence. What's the point of flipping through a few old registers? Everyone knows that the disciple register and the sect records are incomplete. How can that be considered evidence? Exionegia said angrily. Killing the donkey after it's no use. Nothing is incomprehensible. Lin Yi's face was nonchalant. He'd expected this day to come, and he didn't feel any anger towards it. His mentality was basically the same as being bitten by an ant. If he was really unhappy, he'd just reach out and crush it to death. Why would he get angry over it? Of course, there was not such a big gap in strength. However, in terms of body level, people like Chen Dongqing were really just an ant in his eyes. Grandmaster, he's not joking. He's coming with people soon. You'd better think of a way. Seeing Lin Yi's expression, Exionegia became anxious. I'll wait for him to come. I'm trapped here and can't get out. What's the point of thinking? Lin Yi was very optimistic. Exionegia was speechless. He felt that he had bet on the wrong person. Although the situation was indeed difficult to deal with, he should at least think of a way to deal with it. What's the point of throwing caution to the wind? Exionegia stamped his feet anxiously. However, Lin Yi was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Exionegia had no choice but to leave in a hurry. Calculating the time, Chen Dongqing would be coming with people soon. If they saw him snitching on Lin Yi, the first one to die would not be Lin Yi, but Exionegia. Not long after, a group of people arrived at the back cliff in a grandiose manner. The person in the lead was naturally Chen Dongqing. Behind him, in addition to a group of gold core stage elders, there was also a group of black-clothed disciples in special clothing. They were the experts of the law enforcement hall. Lin Yi, the investigation team has confirmed that you are not the Archean martial uncle of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Tell me, what is your ulterior motive for sneaking into the Green Cloud sect of the North Island by pretending to be the martial uncle? Chen Dongqing said aggressively. He couldn't help but look at Lingshan and Ziyu a couple more times as he said that. He'd been waiting for this day for a long time. Hearing this, Lin Yi looked at him calmly and said faintly, Since you said it can't be told, then what else can I say? So, you admit that you pretended to be Martial Granduncle? Chen Dongqing sneered. Haha, why would I admit it? Isn't this all up to you, Vice Head Chen? You're the one who initiated the investigation, and the people involved are all your people. From start to finish, it's all up to you. So, as long as you're happy, Lin Yi said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Chen Dongqing paused. Lin Yi's reaction was far beyond his expectations. Even Lingshan and the others beside Lin Yi didn't seem worried at all, just watching the show. Watching the show? Did these people think this was a joke? As a Jianghu scammer, it's rare to be able to stay calm after being exposed, even if it's just on the surface. Chen Dongqing smiled confidently and didn't waste any more time. He ordered, Enforcers, listen up. Take down this Jianghu scammer who pretends to be our martial granduncle. If he resists, kill him. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of law enforcers immediately surrounded Lin Yi's group. The Golden Core stage elders who came with Chen Dongqing also each guarded a position. Because of the one-step to heaven matrix, they did not have to worry about Lin Yi escaping. However, in order to avoid unnecessary casualties, they would also join forces if necessary. A battle was about to break out. Exionegia, who was following behind, had his heart in his throat. There was nothing he could do in this situation, not to mention helping Lin Yi. He didn't even dare to stand up and say a word. All he could do was to watch the scene unfold before his eyes. "Are you sure you want to arrest me?" Lin Yi didn't even look at the crowd. He just stared at Chen Dongqing calmly. Of course, Chen Dongqing looked at him as if he was looking at a dead man. This time, not only were the masters of the law enforcement hall here, but also more than half of the gold core masters were gathered. Unless Lin Yi was a nascent soul-old monster, he wouldn't be able to survive. "Okay, then let's start cleaning up the sect." Lin Yi nodded. "Oh, so you've accepted your fate?" Chen Dongqing was a little surprised. He thought that Lin Yi would put up a last-ditch struggle, but he didn't expect him to accept his fate so easily. "Accept my fate?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He said meaningfully, "It's not appropriate to use this word on me, because the person who needs to be cleaned up is not me." With that, an invisible giant hand suddenly appeared on top of Chen Dongqing's head. Without giving him any chance to react, his whole spirit was instantly grabbed and then locked into the space of the jade pendant. The whole process took less than half a second. The crowd didn't even realize what happened. They saw Chen Dongqing suddenly collapse to the ground, motionless, as if his soul had been taken away. "Leader Chen! Leader Chen!" A few elders in the gold core stage who were close to him quickly surrounded him. However, no matter how they shouted, it was futile. Chen Dongqing had lost his spirit, and his body had become a vegetable. This time, everyone was scared silly, including the elders in the gold core stage. All of them hurriedly stepped back. Each of them looked at Lin Yi in horror. They didn't know what method Lin Yi used just now, but one thing was certain. Chen Dongqing's appearance was definitely the work of Lin Yi. Originally, in their minds, Lin Yi, the Grand Uncle Master, didn't have much weight. After all, on the surface, he was just a master in the great perfection of the Foundation Establishment stage. Who would have thought that such a master in the great perfection of the Foundation Establishment stage could actually easily defeat Chen Dongqing? Although the strength of Chen Dongqing, the deputy head, was far from outstanding, he was still a master in the middle stage of the Gold Elixir realm. Looking at the inner sect, there were only a handful of people who could really beat him. Apart from the Taishang Elder Chanjiu, even the strongest master in the Gold Elixir realm, Hong Zijuan, Head Hong, could not possibly defeat Chen Dongqing so easily. Lin Yi's move simply subverted everyone's understanding. "Does anyone else want to try?" Lin Yi smiled and slowly glanced at the crowd. Everyone who was swept by him was desperately retreating, for fear that they would accidentally follow in Chen Dongqing's footsteps. Chapter 53:38. Many of them were under Chen Dongqing's command. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, they would fight with Lin Yi without hesitation if Chen Dongqing gave the order. However, the problem was that they didn't even know if their leader, Chen Dongqing, was dead or alive. How could they fight without a leader? Especially Lin Yi's soul-hooking hand. It was something they had never heard or seen before. Humans were always afraid of the unknown. Even the masters of Gold Core Stage were no exception. At this time, Xianijia, who was also shocked, was the first to react. He cleared his throat and said, "Everyone, listen to me. You've all seen the original version of the Green Cloud Calming Secrets. I believe I don't have to say whether it's true or not. Not long ago, Deputy Head Chin took the other original version of the mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills from Martial Granduncle. If I'm not mistaken, he should have taken them to Highest Elder. If it's true or not, I believe he would have announced it in public, but he didn't mention it now. What does this mean?" The crowd couldn't help but be silent. In fact, they didn't need Xianijia to say it. They all knew whether it was true or not. However, they had to follow Chen Dongqing. The fact is very clear. If the Martial Granduncle who gave us so many original mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills is still a fake, I think there's nothing in this world that's real. Xianijia said in a low voice. He needed a lot of courage to say these words in public, because once Chen Dongqing woke up, or the news spread to Highest Elder, he would definitely not end well. However, Lin Yi's miraculous performance gave him enough confidence. He, Xianijia, had always been a cautious person, but when it was time to bet, he would have the courage to put everything on the line. His words made everyone speechless. It was not that they didn't dare to refute, but they really didn't dare to refute in front of Lin Yi. Chen Dongcheng was their example. It was too risky. Everyone, disperse, Xianijia said at last. Everyone looked at each other and finally carried Chen Dongcheng away silently. In terms of strength and status, Xianijia was far from being the one with the highest authority. However, he was the one who had the most right to speak at this moment. After all, he had chosen the right side. After coming out of Ascending Cliff, several Gold Core stage seniors of the Qin family looked at each other and carried Chen Dongcheng to the top of the mountain without saying a word. No one knew the details of Lin Yi. Now, the only one who could end this situation was Highest Elder. When the crowd carried Chen Dongcheng to the top of the mountain, Qianjia was still in the house, studying the mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills that he had just written. He was in high spirits at this moment. He found that it was just as he had expected. Although the two could not directly improve in a level in a short time, it could greatly improve his understanding of mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills. Had Lin could. Was highest had Cheng Yi. Sensing that there was movement outside, Chun Jio did not raise his head. He frowned and said, I have said that you can handle the things below by yourself. You don't have to report everything to me. The crowd could not help but look at each other. They had actually broken the rules by coming up without Highest Elder's permission. It was just that the current situation was special, so they had to do so. At this time, after listening to Chenjia's words, they suddenly felt a little awkward. Were they leaving? Or not leaving? Just when everyone was hesitating, Chunjio finally realized something was wrong. A figure immediately flashed out of the house. The next moment, it appeared in front of Chen Dongqing, whose life or death was unknown. After giving Chen Dongqing a careful examination, Chunjio suddenly turned pale with fright. He was a dignified nascent soul stage-old monster, but he could not see what happened to Chen Dongqing. He could only vaguely sense that Chen Dongqing seemed to have no primordial spirit. However, how could a good person not have a primordial spirit? What the hell is going on? Tell me word by word. Don't leave out a word. Chunjio's face was extremely ugly. He could guess that this must be the work of Lin Yi, but before this, he had never thought that Lin Yi actually had such a means. After listening to the description of these Gold Core stage senior executives, Chunjio's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He said a lot of useless nonsense. These people didn't know what happened to Chen Dongqing at all. Because it happened so suddenly, they couldn't even accurately perceive the appearance of the soul-hooking hand. There was only one sentence to sum it up. Chen Dongqing was glanced at by Lin Yi, and then he lay down. A Gold Core stage expert was just glanced at by someone and became this half-dead state. You actually dare to say this kind of nonsense? If that Lin Yi is so terrible and so heaven-defying, will he be trapped by a mere one-step-to-heaven array? Chen Jio was infuriated. These people were trying to push the blame onto Lin Yi, making him a god. What a bunch of trash. Supreme Elder, please calm down. The Gold Core stage senior executives quickly knelt down, one by one, as if they were walking on thin ice. Although he was angry, Chen Jio did not lose his composure. Although the description of everyone was a mess, at least one thing could be summed up. The means used by Lin Yi had exceeded the understanding of these Gold Core stage masters. In other words, the other party was not simply a primordial spirit of the Foundation establishment great perfection. He had really underestimated him before. After Chen Jio calmed down, he looked at the unconscious Chen Dongqing on the ground and could not help but fall into deep thought. As a Yuanying realm-old monster who stood at the top of the small Jianghu in primitive times, Chen Jio was a first-class existence in terms of strength and vision. However, in the face of the current situation, he was helpless. He did not even know what kind of evil means Chen Dongqing was in. How could he save him? If it was someone else, a vegetable was a vegetable, and Chen Jio would not care about it at all. But Chen Dongqing was different. He was the successor of the Chen family of the North Island that he had painstakingly cultivated. The talent had already withered. If Chen Dongqing was involved, the future of the Chen family of the North Island would be really worrying. Tell me, what should we do about this? Chen Jio glanced at the senior executives of the Gold Core stage who were kneeling on the ground. As soon as these words came out, Everyone could not help but look at each other, and they suddenly became more and more shocked. Did this mean that even the Supreme Elder could not save Qin? In my humble opinion, the one who started the trouble should untie it. A middle-aged man with a jade-like face said carefully. This person's name was Lu Pingon, and his strength was at the late stage of Gold Core. Among the senior executives of the Gold Core stage, he was Qin Dongqing's most powerful helper. In addition, Lu Pingon had another special identity. He was Chen Jie's pro-disciple. If not, he would not dare to speak in front of Chen Jie. Go on. Chen Jie glanced at Lu Pingon and said faintly, yes. Lu Pingon hesitated and said what he thought. Chapter 53:39. I think that no matter what kind of powerful existence Lin Yi is, since he is known as the Taigu Uncle Master of Blue Cloud Sect in the North Island, he will never dare to fall out with us easily. Otherwise, no matter whether his identity is true or false, he will become the mortal enemy of our sect. I believe he knows this very well. Lu Pingon's words were not self-deception. After all, after the disappearance of the chief Hong Zijuan, the Qin family faction had now become the core force of the Blue Cloud Sect in the North Island. Once they fell out with the Qin family faction, it was equivalent to starting a war with the entire Blue Cloud Sect in the North Island, and no one could afford the consequences. Isn't this already falling out? Chen Jie glanced at him. Yes, but it's not completely falling out. Although Deputy Chief Qin's state is very worrying, he is not dead after all, isn't he? Lu Pingon's tone was respectful. You mean that he left himself some leeway? Chen Jie nodded slightly. He was a little overwhelmed by anger just now. Now that he calmed down and thought about it carefully, it really made sense. Since Lin Yi had the means to make Qin Dongqing half dead, it would be easier for him to kill Qin Dongqing if he wanted to. However, he did not do so, and the meaning was self-evident. Yes, if I'm not wrong, he did this to pass a message to you, Master. Lu Pingon said. What message? Chen Jie asked. He wants to talk to you. Lu Pingon said respectfully. He didn't understand the specific situation just now, but now that he came back to his senses, he had already seen it clearly. Obviously, Lin Yi was using Qin Dongqing as bait to force Chen Jie, the Taishang elder, to show up in person. If it went well, Qin Dongqing should still be saved. If it didn't go well, then Qin Dongqing naturally couldn't be saved. Interesting. Then do you think I should talk to him? Chen Jie looked at Lu Pingon meaningfully. This? Lu Pingon hesitated, and then said firmly, in my opinion, we shouldn't talk. Don't talk? Then Dongqing can't be saved? Chen Jie's gaze suddenly became sharp, almost piercing Lu Pingon's mind. He was suspecting the other party's intentions. It was true that Lu Pingon was one of his few pro-disciples, but in his mind, Lu Pingon was far from being comparable to Qin Dongqing. Even pro-disciples were just outsiders, while Qin Dongqing carried almost all the hopes of the Qin family in the North Island. How could they compare? With Qin Dongqing around, disciples like Lu Pingon, no matter how strong and outstanding they were destined to only be supporting characters. However, if Qin Dongqing died, it would be a completely different story for them. There was no second Qin Dongqing in the Qin family of the North Island. Disheartened, Chen Jie was likely to find a qualified successor among his disciples, and the most promising one was Lu Pingon. In the immemorial underworld, the concept of a clan was greater than that of a master and a disciple. This was different from the Heaven Stage Island, and it was similar to the concept of the secular world. Master, please calm down. Disciple sincerity towards you and Vice Head Qin can be seen by the heavens and earth. It's just that considering the big picture, you really can't do it yourself. That would only let Lin Yi succeed. Lu Pingon said quickly. Chen Jie was silent for a moment, squinting at Lu Pingon. In order to show that he had no disloyalty, Lu Pingon could only bite the bullet and choose to look at him. Even if his back was sweating profusely, he did not dare to look away. Finally, Chen Jie's gaze softened. Stand up and talk? Yes. Lu Pingon finally breathed a sigh of relief, and other high-level gold core cultivators who came up together also stood up. However, they were all glared at by Chen Jie, who sent them away with a single word. Tell me what you think. Chen Jie said lightly. In this disciple's opinion, Once you show up in person, there will be no room for negotiation. If you and Lin Yi don't come to an agreement and fall out in front of each other, the first to suffer will be Deputy Head Chen. If you don't fall out with him in person, then the news will inevitably spread, making people think that you have personally confirmed his identity as the immemorial Uncle Master. At that time, if you want to reverse the case and deal with him, there will be no justification. Lu Pingon analyzed. But if I don't show up, isn't it Dongqing who will suffer? Chunjiu frowned. In any case, he must protect Chen Dongqing. So, this disciple's opinion is that we can talk to him, but Master can't show up in person. We should send another person to talk to him, so that no matter what the result is, there is still room for advance and retreat. It is not too late to make a decision after testing the other party's attitude. Lu Pingon suggested. Chenju pondered for a moment and finally decided. Well, then I will send you to talk to him and find a way to find out his bottom line. Remember, no matter what, you can't hurt Dongqing's life. Yes, Master. Lu Pingon was overjoyed. He was willing to take the risk to suggest this so that he could get this chance. No matter what the result was, as long as he performed well, he would be able to occupy a more important position in Chanjia's heart. If Chen Dongqing really couldn't be saved in the end, then Lu Pingon's chance would come. Chen Jiu sighed softly as he watched Lu Pingon leave. He looked at the unconscious Chen Dongqing on the ground. Too bad he's an outsider. They arrived at the sky-reaching cliff. Xi and Ijia had already been sent out by Lin Yi to gather people's support. There was only him, Ling Shan, and the others in the formation. Ziyu's eyes went wide when she saw Lu Pingon's figure. Linny bro, you really are a genius. What kind of divine foresight is this? As long as the Grand Elder isn't an idiot, he'll probably send someone to talk to me. The only difference is who. All right, you guys go back to practicing. Don't bother with this bullshit. Linny waved them off with a smile. Disciple Lu Pingon greets Grand Elder. Lu Pingon bowed solemnly. Oh, so you guys admit that I'm the Grand Elder now? Linny couldn't help but smile. You must be joking, Grand Elder. Whether or not your identity is real isn't confirmed yet, but from your disciple's standpoint, as long as there's a 1 in 10,000 chance that you're real, I will treat you as the real Grand Elder. I won't dare disrespect you at all, Lu Pingon said. Haha, you sure know how to talk. Linny sized him up. What business do you have with me? I'm here for Vice Head Chen, Lu Pingon said carefully. Chapter 53-40. Deputy Sect Leader Chun acted impulsively and offended Martial Granduncle. This matter has been known by Grand Elder. Grand Elder is extremely angry and has decided to punish Deputy Sect Leader Chun personally. However, now Sect Leader Hong has not returned, and the affairs of the sect are complicated and cannot be left without someone in charge. I hope Martial Granduncle can be magnanimous and let Deputy Sect Leader Chin go for the sake of the sect, and let him apologize to you personally. What do you think? While speaking, Lu Pingon carefully stared at every expression of Lin Yi, for fear of missing any useful information. This is Grand Elder's idea? Lin Yi squinted at him and said,
Yes.
Lu Pingon nodded. If it was his own idea, he believed that the other party would not bother to talk with him at all, because it was meaningless. As a result, Lin Yi's reaction surprised him. Since it is his idea, why doesn't he come to talk with me himself? Lu Pingon was choked speechless for a while. This guy did not play his cards according to reason. Normally, at this point, he should be very clear that he was just a mouthpiece. Wasn't it good to leave some leeway for both sides? Did he have to meet the king as soon as he came up? If he really met the king as soon as he came up, Lin Yi might not necessarily get any benefits. What if Grand Elder fell out with him on the spot? Martial Granduncle, in this disciple's opinion, you shouldn't be in a hurry to meet with the Grand Elder. Before the two of you reach a certain tacit understanding, it's more appropriate for this disciple to run errands for you, right? Lu Pingon composed himself and said seriously. If the two sides wanted to sit down and talk, they at least had to confirm that both sides had the intention to negotiate first. Otherwise, when they met, they would directly flip the table. Then there would be no negotiation. Lin Yi glanced at him, a smile that wasn't quite a smile on his face. So what you're saying is, I'll talk to you first, and you'll tell the Grand Elder the conditions, and then he'll decide if he wants to accept it or not, and then you come here to talk terms with me." Lu Pingon opened his mouth, wanting to correct his words, but nodded in the end. That was what he meant. Correcting the words would only make it sound better, but it wouldn't change the essence of the situation at all. He'd already thought it through, too. It didn't matter how beautiful his words were when dealing with people like Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't play by the rules at all. "Aren't you guys misunderstanding something?" Lin Yi said with a smile. "What?" Lu Pingon was stunned. "In the current situation, I'm not asking you for help, but you are asking me for help, aren't you?" Lin Yi grinned leisurely. "This?" Lu Pingon frowned and said in a deep voice, "Indeed, Deputy Sect Leader Chen's state is very worrying. Grand Supreme Elder hopes that Martial Granduncle can be magnanimous and let Deputy Sect Leader Chen go. But then again, from Martial Granduncle's point of view, I'm afraid it's better not to let anything happen to Deputy Sect Leader Chen, right? Haha, from my point of view, it's just cleaning up the sect." "You think too much," Linny said indifferently. If it weren't for the mission that Chenju had given him, Lu Pingon really wouldn't want to waste his breath here. This guy didn't have the slightest awareness or sincerity to negotiate. He was completely stubborn and stubborn. What the hell could he possibly achieve from this? "Do you really want to fall out with the entire Green Cloud sect of the North Island?" Lu Pingon was forced to make it clear. This kind of words should not appear in a negotiation. When it appeared, it was basically not far from the collapse of the negotiation. Guess. Lin Yi's answer was so irresponsible that it made people vomit blood. Lu Pingon was about to go crazy, but he could only bite the bullet and say, "I guess you won't, because it's not good for you and the secular disciples who came with you. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for them, shouldn't you?" Could it be that the Grand Elder is already planning to target them? Lin Yi, on the other hand, was surprised. He said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "The Grand Elder is a nascent soul master after all. I didn't expect you to have such a unique way of doing things." Saying it was unique was actually despicable and shameless. This, Lu Pingon couldn't help but choke. Even if it was really Chanjia's intention, he couldn't be the one to take the blame. He quickly said, "Don't get me wrong, Grand Elder doesn't mean this, and so do we. We just have to consider everything carefully, don't we?" "Since you don't mean this, then what are you talking about?" "I was alarmed for a false alarm. I thought Grand Elder was going to attack them," Linny said angrily. Lu Pingon really wanted to slap his face with a false alarm. The words had been very clear, and it was obvious that it was so. There was really no one who could pretend not to understand it. Couldn't they negotiate happily? "What are you still doing here? Hurry up and convey my meaning to Grand Elder," Lin Yi urged. Lu Pingon was dumbfounded again. They hadn't talked about anything yet. From the perspective of negotiation, it was not even a warm-up. How could it end? "Speaking of which, what exactly did you mean?" "What I don't have time to waste with you. Next time, remember clearly, if you really want to talk, let Grand Elder do it himself. Otherwise, I won't receive you," Linny said straightforwardly. At this point, even if Lu Pingon was thick-skinned, he couldn't stay any longer. He could only leave embarrassedly. Back at the top of the mountain, after listening to Lu Pingon's dejected report, Chanjia's gloomy face suddenly became even uglier. "This old man asked you to go to test Lin Yi's bottom line and attitude. What did you find out?" "This disciple is ashamed." Lu Pingon's face was full of shame and anger. In fact, he couldn't be blamed for not doing his job well. It was really Lin Yi's way of doing things was too wild. From the beginning to the end, there was an unsettling pattern. What should he do? Then tell me yourself. What should we do next? Do you really want this old man to do it personally? Chunjio snorted coldly. That definitely won't work. Until the last step, Master, you can't easily go out. Otherwise, you will really be led by the nose by him. Lu Pingon shook his head and said in a low voice, "Although this disciple is dejected this time, thinking about it carefully, it can't be said that I didn't gain anything. At least, I can be sure that he doesn't really want to shed all pretense of cordiality with us. Otherwise, when this disciple asked him directly, he wouldn't have avoided answering. This has long been expected. Chen frowned, thinking that it was impossible for Lin Yi to fall out with them even if he wanted to. If he did, then he would stay at Ascending Heaven Cliff for the rest of his life. Chapter 53:41. Yes, there's another point. Although Lin Yi doesn't want to talk to me directly, it doesn't mean that he has to force you to talk to him in person. After all, it's not only us who need leeway, it's the same for him. Lu Pingon analyzed. Then, Chinju signaled him to continue. I think that Lin Yi must have a request, and he definitely wants to talk to us, but he doesn't want to talk to me like this. First, he thinks it's too passive, and second, he thinks it's too embarrassing. Maybe he's looking for a mouthpiece to talk to, Lu Pingon said. Who? Chinju asked. Jia. He was the only one who could talk to Lin Yi and win Lin Yi's trust among all the high-level gold core cultivators in Green Cloud Sect in the North Island. Okay, then you go to him. Chunju's eyes flashed with a hint of fierceness. After this incident, it was obvious that Jia would be a dead man. When Lu Pingon came to him, Jia was still trying to win over other high-level gold core cultivators. He knew that it was a critical period for him to win the hearts and minds of the people. One more supporter meant one more momentum and one more chance of winning. Jia's blood turned cold when he saw Lu Pingon, Chunjia's direct disciple. His first thought was that the matter was exposed, and Highest Elder was going to punish him. When he understood what Lu Pingon meant, he couldn't help but be stunned. Judging from Lu Pingon's words, Highest Elder was going to negotiate with Lin Yi on an equal footing, and Lu Pingon and himself were the representatives of the two parties? Jia certainly didn't dare to agree to this kind of thing without permission. After understanding Lu Pingon's meaning, he quickly ran to Skycliff to ask Lin Yi. Since they want to talk, let's talk. We won't lose anything anyway, Lin Yi agreed casually. Then, how do we talk? Jia said weakly. Can't you wrangle? Lin Yi glanced at him. Wrangle? Jia stared blankly and said, Grandmaster, we should have a goal in our negotiation. Is wrangling with each other our goal? That's right. Wrangling is our goal. He can talk however he wants. All you have to do is one thing. Don't object or agree. In short, it's wrangling. Once you've wrangled yourself until you faint, you'll have succeeded, Lin Yi said. Why? Jia did not understand what Lin Yi meant at the moment. Since it was just wrangling for the sake of wrangling, what was the point? There are two reasons. First, it is Chen Dongqing who is half dead, not our people. So they should be the ones who are anxious. We have no reason to be anxious at all. When it comes to negotiations, it has always been the one who is anxious who suffers. Just wait and see. After wrangling for a long time, they will definitely lose their cool. That will be our chance. Lin Yi advised. Yes. Jia nodded and asked, what about the second one? The second is you, Lin Yi said, looking at him. Me? Jia was puzzled. Let me ask you, have you had any success in winning people's hearts these days? Lin Yi asked. Very little. Jia was embarrassed. It was not that he did not work hard, but his strength and status were too ordinary. Usually, no one paid attention to him among the Gold Core stage higher-ups. At this critical moment, he did not have much appeal at all. Even if they were dissatisfied with the Qin family's faction, they would only laugh and say that he was overestimating himself after listening to his suggestion. Very few of them took it seriously. It was actually better now. Due to the deterrence brought by Lin Yi's display of power, the other Gold Core stage higher-ups no longer looked down on Jia like before. After all, in their eyes, even if Lin Yi was not comparable to the Highest Elder, a nascent soul stage old monster, he was definitely not someone that they, the Gold Core stage experts, could compete with. However, it was unrealistic to say that he could be easily won over. So, this negotiation is an opportunity to increase our influence, Lin Yi pointed out. Jia finally understood when he heard this. He patted his head and said, I understand now. Granduncle, you mean that this negotiation should not only be delayed, but it should be delayed to the point that everyone knows about it. In this way, we can form a concept in the sect that you and the Highest Elder are equal in status. As your negotiation representative, I can also increase my status and influence. Yes, but there's another meaning. Everyone knows that the Green Cloud sect in the North Island is divided into the local faction and the Chen family faction. Now, the highest elder of both parties is the representative of the Chen family faction. So, who do you think is the representative of the local faction? Linny said with a smile. Of course, it's you, granduncle. Xionijia's eyes lit up. The reason why he couldn't rope in the senior management and disciples of the Gold Core stage of other local factions was that they didn't believe that he could shoulder the burden of the local faction. Now, Linny stood out and made a rallying call. Not only did he easily get rid of Qin Dongqing, but he also forced the highest elder to sit down and negotiate patiently. This was something that even Hong Zijuan, the head of the sect, couldn't do. In this way, once the idea of being an equal was deeply rooted in people's hearts, it was impossible for Lin Yi not to be the leader of the local faction. Because all the senior management and disciples of the Gold Core stage of the local faction would gather spontaneously. Once the momentum was formed, it would be unstoppable. So, why don't you go and wrangle with him? Lin Yi shrugged. Understood. Xionijia immediately went with confidence. What happened next was just as Lin Yi expected. Although Xionijia usually looked honest and sincere, his brain was actually very active. He was able to argue with Lu Pingon with great eloquence and was not at a disadvantage at all. Lu Pingon almost went crazy. He thought he could relax a little without facing Lin Yi directly, but he didn't expect such a guy to come. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary pot of warm water, but after a long time of contact, he knew that this guy could never be boiled. He was no less difficult to deal with than Lin Yi. In the end, there was only one word. There was no way out. But he couldn't turn against him openly. After all, in this negotiation alone, they were the passive and weak party. Moreover, it was not that the other party didn't cooperate. Instead, it should be said that they were very cooperative. They just kept talking and wasting time. The other party was determined to fight a protracted war. What could he do? If it weren't for Qin Dongqing, Chun Jiu would have turned against him long ago. But now, he could only grit his teeth and suppress his anger, instructing Lu Pingon to continue to grind with Xionijia. But as time went on, Lin Yi's image and status in the Green Cloud sect of the North Island really changed. One was Bing Wuqing, the other was Xue Jianfeng, and the other was Long Long, who was at Foundation Establishment Perfection. When Hong Qingyuan and the rest saw these people for the first time, they really felt like they had been smashed by a pie. A mere training in the secular world had actually brought back a bunch of pillars. This was not just a blessing in disguise, but a raging fire that was about to burn them to ashes. However, for Hong Qingyuan and the other top executives who had the right to speak in the sect, the sudden emergence of two experts in the peak of the Gold Core realm was a real trouble. There was a very real problem. If a newcomer appeared, what would the old people do? The immemorial martial world had always been a very realistic world, where one's strength determined one's status. Those with Golden Core great perfection were already existences that stood above tens of thousands of people in the Snow Sword faction, so their status naturally could not be careless. Even if they could not directly make Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng the same rank as the sect leader, they should at least be above the others, right? Otherwise, it would not match their strength. However, even if Vice Sect Master Xue Liping agreed, would the other 5 elders, including Qi Qinqiu, agree? Speaking of which, Xue Liping had always been restless as the Vice Sect Master. It was only because he was at loggerheads with Great Elder Qi Qinqiu that Hong Qingyuan, as the Sect Master, had been able to control the situation. Now that there was suddenly his son, Xue Jianfeng, who was above tens of thousands of people, joining hands, how could he control the situation? Fortunately, there was still Bing Wuqing. Hong Qingyuan was a little worried that Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng were on the same side. He did not expect them to fight as soon as they came back, and the cause was Long Long. Xue Jianfeng tried every possible way to kill Long Long, but Bing Wuqing, who had never had any relationship with Long Long, stood out for the first time. Her attitude was very tough, and anyone who dared to touch Long Long had to be prepared to face her wrath. Although it was strange, Hong Qingyuan and the others were obviously happy to see it happen. Not only could they protect Long Long, a seedling with great potential, but more importantly, they had an excellent candidate to keep Xue Jianfeng in check. In the past, there was great elder Qi Qianqiu to keep vice sect master Xue Liping in check. Although there were two more golden core perfection experts now, they also kept each other in check, making it convenient for Hong Qingyuan to continue controlling the situation. In contrast, when Xue Jianfeng heard Bing Wuqing's stance, he was stunned on the spot. During the primeval trials, Bing Wuqing had helped Long Long out of trouble, which had already puzzled him. Now, she had actually gone from bad to worse, and was willing to shed all pretense of cordiality for Long Long. This was completely beyond his expectations. This was almost equivalent to openly standing on Lin Yi's side. What the hell was Bing Wuqing up to? In the end, in the face of Bing Wuqing's unreasonable and tough stance, and in the face of Hong Qingyuan and Qi Qianqiu's cooperation, Xue Jianfeng and his father Xue Liping could only choose to give in. After a long time of wrangling, they finally came up with a result that was neither painful nor itchy: house arrest. This time, Long Long was prepared to go into closed-door training. After she had stabilized her realm, she would start preparing to break through to Golden Core. The so-called house arrest could be said to be neither painful nor itchy to her, and was basically equivalent to no punishment. After the meeting, Xue Jianfeng deliberately blocked Bing Wuqing's way. There was a problem that he had to clarify. "Get out of my way." Bing Wuqing walked away expressionlessly. "Wait." Xue Jianfeng forcibly blocked her way. After the other higher-ups of the sect had all left, he lowered his voice and said, "What the hell are you doing? Do I need to explain to you?" Bing Wuqing glanced at him. "Of course. Don't forget that we're on the same side. It's fine if you don't help me, but you've been shielding Lung Lung over and over again. Have you ever thought about the consequences of this?" Xue Jianfeng said angrily. "What consequences could there be?" Bing Wuqing looked indifferent. Xue Jianfeng was about to explode from anger. He said angrily, "Shielding Long Long is equivalent to shielding Lin Yi. You're betraying the core." "Oh? But why did I hear that the higher-ups told us not to provoke Lin Yi? In comparison, it's more appropriate to put the label of betrayal on you. At least I didn't do something as petty as trapping and killing Lin Yi. Am I right?" Bing Wuqing retorted. Chapter 53-43. Xue Jianfeng was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He was full of bitterness at the mention of this matter. In order to seal Bing Wuqing's mouth, he was forced to share half of the consciousness grass with her. In the end, before he could even get out of the primordial trial grounds, before he could even warm up the remaining half of the consciousness grass, and before he could even feel the magical effects of the consciousness refinement, it was snatched away by Lin Yi unreasonably. As a result, the consciousness grass that he had painstakingly obtained ended up in Bing Wuqing's hands, while he himself had nothing. Just thinking about it made him so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. "Is there anything else?" Bing Wuqing glanced at him and said lightly, "If there's nothing else, please move aside. I'm going back to cultivate in seclusion. The consciousness grass can't be kept for too long, or its effects will be reduced." Xue Jianfeng felt a sweetness in his throat. This time, he was so angry that he really wanted to vomit blood. Bing Wuqing left leisurely, and Xue Jianfeng could only grit his teeth. She was obviously trying to anger him. What could he do? "Humph. Don't let me find any evidence of your betrayal, or you'll be the first to suffer." Xue Jianfeng secretly gritted his teeth. He now felt that there was something fishy about Bing Wuqing. If the first time she sheltered Long Long in the primordial trial grounds was a little abnormal, then the signs of this abnormality were becoming more and more obvious. He was almost certain that Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi had some kind of unspeakable relationship, but he lacked evidence for the time being. Without decisive evidence, even if Xue Jianfeng suspected, he wouldn't dare to report to the bespectacled doctor. Otherwise, if Bing Wuqing made a false accusation and revealed the fact that he killed Lin Yi, he would be in even more trouble. After the meeting, Long Long was very cooperative and took the initiative to accept house arrest. Of course, in reality, she was cultivating in seclusion. In addition, Bing Wuqing saw that Long Long's punishment had been settled. and she had completed the task that Linny had given her, so she couldn't wait to cultivate in seclusion. After all, for him, not only did he want to use the half of the divine knowledge grass to refine his divine sense and become the strongest gold core stage master in the legends, but he also had a more important purpose. Don't forget, Linny gave him a condensed nascent golden pill. What Bing Wuqing didn't expect was that Xue Jianfeng's quietness was just a facade. After less than half a month, Xue Jianfeng had reverted to his old ways. But this time, he didn't attack Cold Long directly, but had other intentions. The 15th of every month was the regular meeting day for all the gold core cultivators of the Snow Sword School. All the big and small matters of the school would be discussed and dealt with on this day. Apart from this, unless it was a special situation, the Elders' Conference would not be specially convened. As usual, Sect Master Hong Qingyuan took the main seat, but the two seats beside him were in dispute. The previous meeting was a welcoming ceremony, and those who attended were not only Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, but also Cold Long, who had achieved foundation-building Great Circle, and special seats were specially arranged for them. This was understandable, but now that it was a regular meeting, everyone's seat was very particular. Everyone knew that the closer one's seat was to Sect Master Hong Qingyuan, the higher their position was. Therefore, it had always been Vice Sect Master Xue Liping and Qi Qianqiu, with the 5 great elders sitting on the left and right. To put it bluntly, Xue Liping on the left and Qi Qianqiu on the right. This was the usual rule. But now, it couldn't be done. If it was still the same as before, then where would Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng sit? Taking a step back, Bing Wuqing was in seclusion now, so there was no need to consider it for the time being. But Xue Jianfeng was still here. As expected, the moment Sect Master Hong Qingyuan sat down, Xue Jianfeng sat on his right. At the same time, his father, Xue Liping, sat on Hong Qingyuan's left. The father and son had directly occupied the 2 most prominent seats. Seeing this, the faces of the 5 great elders, including Qi Qianqiu, darkened. Usually, the 5 of them were not completely of one mind, but at this time, they were definitely on the same side. After all, if they really let Xue Jianfeng and his father cook the rice, it would not only be Great Elder Qi Qianqiu's position that would be affected, but the other 4 great elders would also suffer. This was something they absolutely could not tolerate. Xue Jianfeng, what is the meaning of this? Qi Qianqiu frowned and said in a low voice. He did not sit, and neither did the other 4 great elders. As for the remaining ordinary gold core cultivators, they did not dare to sit. The entire meeting hall was filled with a group of people. Other than Sect Master Hong Qingyuan, only Xue Jianfeng and his father were seated. Oh, nothing. It's just a meeting. Don't just stand there. Great Elder Qi, quickly sit. Xue Jianfeng pretended to be polite and pulled out the chair beside him, indicating for Qi Qianqiu to take a seat. You're sitting in the wrong seat, Qi Qianqiu said bluntly. Is that so? Xue Jianfeng looked to his left and right, and said with a puzzled expression, I don't think so. Doesn't our Snow Sword faction always arrange the ranking according to our strength? Aside from sect leader Hong, I seem to be the only expert in Golden Core realm here. I'm still young, so don't lie to me, Great Elder Qi. Qi Qianqiu and the others were speechless for a long time, but they could not refute him. Chapter 53-44. Of course we have to arrange a position that matches my Golden Core perfection strength. Sect leader Hong, what kind of position do you think we should arrange for me? Xue Jianfeng turned his head to look at Hong Qingyuan. All of a sudden, everyone's focus shifted to Sect Master Hong Qingyuan, who had been silent all this while. At this time, he was still habitually tapping his finger on the table. After pondering for a moment, he slowly said, This is not a small problem. We need to discuss it properly. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly. He spoke as if he was serious, but it was the same as not saying anything. This couldn't be blamed on Hong Qingyuan. From his point of view, there was no other way. After all, no matter what, a new generation expert like Xue Jianfeng had to shoulder a heavy responsibility. If he couldn't make the best use of the Golden Core perfection experts that other sects yearned for, then it would be a dereliction of his duty as the sect leader. But out of consideration for controlling the overall situation, Hong Qingyuan couldn't possibly let Xue Jianfeng, this rising star, overtake the host. Otherwise, with Xue Jianfeng and his father Xue Liping's character, things would definitely get out of hand in the future, and that would be a huge problem. Sect leader Hong means that this is today's important topic? Qi Qianxiu and the others looked at each other. That's right. Everyone sit down first. There's no need to rush over the position. Let's all express our opinions and discuss it to a conclusion. I think there's no need to fight over it anymore. What does everyone think? Hong Qingyuan suggested. Okay. Qi Qianxiu didn't argue and led the elders to their seats. Then, who will speak first? Hong Qingyuan's eyes swept across the crowd. Only he, the sect leader, had the final say in this kind of matter. However, the more it was so, the more he couldn't reveal his opinion. Only by remaining calm and letting everyone express their opinions would he be able to grasp the most initiative. Qi Qianxiu and the others looked at each other and remained silent. Because they didn't inform each other beforehand, they didn't dare to speak before they understood the pros and cons. Then I'll say a few words first. Xue Liping smiled, then said, as the saying goes, don't avoid relatives. Although Fo is my son, he's already a golden core perfection expert. I think we should arrange a corresponding important position for him. Otherwise, if word gets out, it will be hard to convince the masses. We might even be laughed at by outsiders. That's not appropriate. Vice Sect Master Xue, why don't you clarify what kind of important position you think we should give him? Qi Qianxiu narrowed his eyes as he asked. As an expert second only to the Grand Elder, I feel that he should at least be the second in command. I didn't say that he would be the sect leader. After all, he's still young and inexperienced. He won't be able to control the overall situation for the time being, Xue Liping pointed out. These words caused Hong Qingyuan's eyelids to twitch. His expression remained unchanged, but he couldn't help but want to curse in his heart. If he can't control the situation now, does that mean he wants to control the situation in the future? It turned out that this pair of father and son didn't want to be the second in command at all, but were plotting for his position as the sect leader. When Qi Qianxiu and the others heard this, although they frowned, they were secretly laughing in their hearts. This pair of father and son were really too arrogant. Weren't they clearly pushing Hong Qingyuan to their side? Second position? Taking it literally, the position below the sect leader is naturally the vice sect leader. Does vice sect leader Xue intend to abdicate and give it to his son? The third elder grinned. Then I have no objections. Although there's no such thing as a son inheriting the father's position in our Snow Sword School, your family's situation is special. With such a good son, I feel that it's barely feasible to have him replace you as the vice sect leader. The fifth elder expressed his opinion. Seconded. The fourth elder nodded. I agree as well. The second elder nodded as well. Since everyone has the same opinion, then I have no objections. Qi Qianxiu nodded as well. With the current situation, it was already unrealistic to not let Xue Jianfeng take the position. Since that was the case, he might as well let him replace his father Xue Liping. In any case, he was already used to fighting with the vice sect leader. It didn't matter even if the father was replaced by the son. Haha, everyone seems to have misunderstood. As the vice sect leader, I've always been conscientious and conscientious. Even if I don't have any merits, I've still put in hard work. Besides, I've never said that I want to abdicate, right? Xue Liping sneered. Also, let me add something. My father, as the vice sect leader, doesn't seem to be the number 2 figure. Grand Elder Qi, haven't you always boasted that you're superior to my father? From what you're saying, you're eyeing my Grand Elder position? Qi Qianxiu couldn't help but laugh. Xue Jianfeng, although you're young, you've still grown up in the sect. Don't you know how the Grand Elder position came about? It's not self-bestowed. The Grand Elder is the same as the sect leader. It's a public election by the Elders' Council. At the same time, it has to be personally acknowledged by the Grand Elder. Do you think you can become the Grand Elder just because you want to? The second elder snorted disdainfully. That's right. Other than strength, the Grand Elder's most important is his contributions to the sect and his deep qualifications. Which of these two do you think you're qualified for? The other elders echoed. Shui Jianfeng was stunned. Shui Jianfeng was stunned when he heard that. Although those words were unpleasant to the ears, he really had no way of refuting them. Aside from his strength as a gold core great perfection cultivator, he had nothing else. There was no need to talk about his qualifications, and if one were to talk about his contributions to the sect, Qi Qianqiu was a brother who had risked his life for the previous sect master, who was also the current great elder. Back then, he had even contributed so much to the sect that no one in the entire Snow Sword sect could compare to him. Everyone, you've misunderstood. I've never thought of becoming the Grand Elder, Shui Jianfeng could only say. Then what exactly do you want to do? Everyone looked at each other. Vice sect leader, but add 2 words in front of it. Managing, Shui Jianfeng said directly. Managing vice sect leader? Everyone was stunned. Then, their expressions changed. Qi Qianqiu, the Grand Elder, could rely on his qualifications to slightly suppress the vice sect leader. They were basically on equal footing. However, the managing vice sect leader, as the name suggested, was clearly above the vice sect leader. Naturally, it would be above the Grand Elder as well. That was the true number 2 figure in the Elders' Council. In other words, you're going to have a managing vice sect leader out of nowhere? Qi Qianqiu looked at the calm Hong Qingyun and said, Sect leader Hong, do you think there's a need for that? That's right. Is there a need for that? Hong Qingyun did not answer him directly. Instead, he went with the flow and looked at Shui Jianfeng. To be continued. Chapter 53-45. Of course there is. As the name suggests, the managing deputy sect master has to share the burden of the sect master. Think about it, sect master Hong not only has to take care of the sect's affairs, but you also have to serve the supreme elder at the same time. If there is any big matter in the Jianghu, you have to personally deal with the other clans and sections. There are too many things, and the burden is too heavy. Therefore, it is very necessary to have a managing deputy sect master. What does sect master Hong think? Everyone looked at Hong Qingyun. At this point, it wouldn't be right if he, as the sect master, didn't express his opinion. Tap, tap, tap. Hong Qingyun tapped on the table again and again. After whetting everyone's appetite, he suddenly grinned. Since that's the case, then let's have a deputy sect master. I'll have to rely on you in the future. What? Qi Qianqiu and the others were shocked. It was obvious that the deputy sect master wanted to split the sect master's authority. Compared to them, the elders, Hong Qingyun, the sect master, would suffer the most. They thought that Hong Qingyun would refute the deputy sect master's words, but who would have thought that he would agree so easily? What was going on? Shui Jianfeng and his father Shui Liping were also surprised. The two of them had even prepared a set of words to deal with the other party's refusal, but they didn't expect Hong Qingyun to be so tactful and agree without saying anything. Then, many thanks to Sect Master Hong. Shui Jianfeng nodded slightly, already assuming the posture of the deputy sect master. When he looked at Qi Qianqiu and the others again, his gaze was filled with a sense of superiority. This newly promoted second in command of the Elders Association was very quick to get into character. Sect Master Hong, this is no small matter. Shouldn't it be better to report it to the Supreme Elder? Qi Qianqiu said with a frown. He didn't know what Hong Qingyun was thinking, but this matter was clearly not a good thing for him and the other elders. With his deep friendship with the Supreme Elder, he believed that the Supreme Elder wouldn't allow Shui Jianfeng to crawl on the necks of the other elders for no reason. About that, Hong Qingyun pointed at the table and said ambiguously, the deputy sect master's matter is indeed very important, but the Supreme Elder has been in seclusion recently. I don't dare to disturb him. What do the others think? I don't think that's necessary. According to the tradition of our Snow Sword School, only the sect master and the Great Elder need to be confirmed by the Great Elder. Everything else can be decided by our Elders Association. If we have to bother the Great Elder for every little thing, what's the point of having us? Shui Liping was the first to step forward to object. I don't think it's necessary. That's what I'm thinking as well. The Great Elder's seclusion concerns the future of our entire Snow Sword School. How can I disturb him for a small matter like mine? If anyone insists on going, I suggest that they personally go find the Great Elder and see what the outcome is, Shui Jianfeng said to Qi Qinxiu and the other elders with ill intentions. Everyone fell silent. They could only look at Hong Qingyuan. Communicating with the Supreme Elder was a privilege only the sect master had. Unless there was a special situation, others couldn't skip ranks to report it. Not to mention, disturbing the Supreme Elder's seclusion was a matter of great importance. Most people didn't have the courage to do so. Hong Qingyuan pondered for a moment, then finally made his decision. How about this? Logically speaking, this matter does indeed need to be reported to the Supreme Elder, but it's not important enough to be reported to him alone. So, I'll report it when I pay a visit to the Supreme Elder next time. Before that, the Deputy Sect Master's matter is decided.
Sect Master is wise.
Shui Jianfeng and Shui Liping looked at each other and smiled. Qi Qinxiu and the others could only shake their heads helplessly. Since Hong Qingyuan had already made his decision, it was futile no matter how much they objected. After all, the sect master had the final say. Moreover, Shui Jianfeng and Shui Liping also had the right to speak. So, they could only resign themselves to fate. All right, since the sect master thinks so highly of me, I, Shui Jianfeng, will not pass on this responsibility. As the saying goes, a new official must make 3 changes. As the deputy sect master, this is the first time I'm officially participating in the Elders' Council. I can't disappoint everyone. Shui Jianfeng paused for a moment. Then, his gaze fell on a woman sitting in the last row. It was Cold's master, Su Xiaodong. Being stared at like that, Su Xiaodong's heart skipped a beat. The last time Shui Jianfeng launched an attack, it was Bing Wuqing who stopped it. Now that Bing Wuqing was still in closed-door training, Shui Jianfeng had now become the deputy sect master, who was second only to one. If he were to launch an attack in front of everyone again, what could she use to fight against him? As expected, Shui Jianfeng's next sentence was aimed at Cold again. As the deputy sect master, my first topic is to discuss Cold's matter with everyone again. Cold, what else is there? The last meeting has already reached a conclusion. Don't tell me you want to overturn it? Su Xiaodong quickly objected. What's your position? Do you have the right to speak now? Shui Jianfeng glanced at her disdainfully. Su Xiaodong was so angry that her face turned red. She could not say a word for a long time. Indeed, in terms of their positions, she was only a candidate elder, while the other party was the dignified deputy sect master. They were not on the same level at all. At this moment, Hong Qingyuan came to the rescue and said, "It's all right. Speak freely." However, Cold's matter has already been settled. There's really no need to continue to keep a close eye on it. He had already taken a big step back by approving the appointment of the deputy sect master. If he were to continue to tolerate and make concessions on Cold's matter, he would be lacking a bottom line. In the eyes of others like Qi Qinxiu, they might think that he had secretly reached a tacit agreement with Shui Jianfeng and Shui Liping. That would cause dissension and dissension. That was not a situation he wanted to see. Deputy sect master, it's true that a new official has to make changes. However, aren't you being too persistent by repeatedly setting fire to the same place? The third elder sneered. The rest of Qi Qinxiu and the others also had a playful look on their faces. Everyone, you've misunderstood. Although I'm still talking about Cold, I'm not talking about her disobeying orders during her training. I'm talking about another serious crime of hers, leaking the sect's mantra to outsiders. Shui Jianfeng said with certainty. What? As soon as these words came out, everyone, including Su Xiaodong, was shocked. Disobeying the sect's orders could be a light or a serious crime. A simple confinement would be enough. However, if it was really as Shui Jianfeng said, that Cold had leaked the sect's mantra to outsiders, then the crime would be really serious. This was practically an act of betrayal. Chapter 53-46. P.S. Presenting today's update, and at the same time, pulling votes for Chidian's 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes, and the votes will be rewarded with coins. Begging for everyone's support and appreciation. Do you have any evidence? Hong Qingyuan hurriedly asked in a deep voice. Many people know about this matter. During the primeval trials, Lin Yi and his subordinates had accurately locked onto the vital points of our Snow Sword faction's various techniques. This is not a coincidence. Even if you use your toes to think, someone must have revealed our Snow Sword faction's mental cultivation method and martial techniques to them. Without a doubt, this person can only be Long Long, who has always been very close to Lin Yi. There is no other possibility, Xue Jianfeng said with conviction. The atmosphere in the meeting hall instantly became much more solemn. From the sect leader Hong Qingyuan to the ordinary Gold Core stage elders, everyone unconsciously frowned and collectively fell into silence. This is only your one-sided statement, Su Xiaodong retorted. She had never heard Long Long mention this matter, so she did not know the specific situation. When she suddenly heard Xue Jianfeng's words, her heart was already in a mess. She just instinctively believed that her disciple would not betray the sect. That was all. My one-sided statement? Humph. I have a real witness for what I said. Our sect's disciple, Luo Shasheng, is the victim. Do you want to ask him to come over and be the witness? Xue Jianfeng's face was filled with confidence. Other than him, there was no one else who knew about this matter. Luo Shasheng and the other Snow Sword faction disciples who had participated in the secular world's training would certainly follow his lead. Of course, this matter would be decided by what he said. Su Xiaodong immediately felt a little guilty. She believed that Long Long was innocent, but the other party had even brought out a witness. They were preparing to directly make this an ironclad case. This matter cannot be underestimated. Since there is a witness, then let's call him over and ask him face to face. This will be good for everyone, Hong Qingyuan immediately decided. All right. Xue Jianfeng approved of this move and immediately sent someone to find Luo Shasheng. Luo Shasheng was frightened to the point that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly when faced with the questions of these big shots. He stuttered as he recounted the situation of the primeval trials. At this moment, he didn't dare to lie in the slightest. In fact, Xue Jianfeng didn't need him to deliberately lie. With him here, Luo Shasheng only needed to report truthfully and not speak any superfluous words. After listening to Luo Shasheng's report, Hong Qingyuan and the others looked at each other, and their expressions became more and more solemn. It was obvious that Luo Shasheng did not lie. Otherwise, it would not have escaped their eyes at all. It was because of this that they were so solemn. From the looks of it, Long Long's crime of revealing the sect's heart technique was almost certain. There's nothing to say now, right? Xue Jianfeng looked at everyone proudly. At the same time, he didn't forget to take care of Su Xiaodong. Usually, he wouldn't put such an inconspicuous substitute elder in his eyes, but who asked him to be Long Long's master? Su Xiaodong was speechless. She wanted to refute, but she didn't know how to refute. After all, they had even brought out a witness, and her words carried little weight. How could she refute? Great elder, what do you think? Hong Qingyuan looked at Qi Qianqiu. Qi Qianqiu glanced at Xue Jianfeng and said slowly, "It sounds serious, but in my opinion, we can't rush to a conclusion now. No matter what, we still have to confront Long Long face to face. What do you think, sect leader?" Yes, that's what I think too. Hong Qingyuan nodded. Although the sect had 2 more experts in the Golden Core realm, no one would complain about having too many talented disciples with unlimited potential. A super genius like Long Long, no matter which sect she was placed in, even in the top 4 clans and sects of the entire primeval underworld, would definitely be a treasure that they could only wish for. Unless it was absolutely necessary, otherwise, why would they destroy themselves? Confront? Xue Jianfeng frowned. He knew very well that once Long Long was called over, it would definitely be a back-and-forth wrangling. Just as he was about to think of an excuse to reject it, Su Xiaodong on the other side was the first to become restless. No way. Su Xiaodong quickly shouted. Why not? Hong Qingyuan and Qi Qianqiu looked at each other. Long Long is currently in closed-door training to break through to the Golden Core realm. Once she's interrupted, the consequences will be unimaginable. Su Xiaodong said anxiously. She's already breaking through to the Golden Core realm so soon? Everyone was shocked to hear this. In just a short year, she had soared from the early stage of foundation building all the way to the foundation building perfected. This in itself was already a very remarkable miracle. From the perspective of any normal person, Long Long would have to settle down for a few years in her current position and only start to prepare after her realm was completely stabilized. How could she break through to the Golden Core realm so soon? Where did she get such confidence and confidence? Shui Jianfeng's eyes lit up when he heard this. As a Gold Core perfected realm cultivator, he had long looked down on Long Long. However, since it was the critical period for Long Long to break through to the Golden Core realm, then there was something to be done. As everyone knew, the breakthrough of any stage in isolation was very particular about doing it in one go. It was even more so when it came to breaking through to the Golden Core realm, especially for a genius disciple like Long Long who had an unparalleled talent. One should know that the most important thing for a so-called genius was to have indomitable confidence and pride. Because of this confidence and pride, they could often dig out their talent to the fullest and become an existence that ordinary disciples could only look up to. However, this was also a double-edged sword. Once they encountered a setback at an important juncture, after the confidence and pride that they had all along been dealt a blow, these so-called geniuses would most likely be unable to recover from the setback, or even vanish into the masses. There were too many such precedents in the small Jianghu in the ancient times, too many to mention. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if they could not kill the genius Long Long, even if they could only interrupt Long Long's breakthrough rhythm, causing her to be stuck at the Golden Core realm bottleneck for a few more years or decades, it would still be a pleasant surprise. So what if she's breaking through to the Golden Core realm? She can ignore the summons of the Elders Guild just because she's breaking through to the Golden Core realm. She can even ignore the crime of betraying the sect. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Shui Jianfeng immediately sneered with slanted eyes.
But
Su Xiaodong still wanted to argue. But my ass. If the emperor breaks the law, he will be punished the same as the common people. Long Long is just an ordinary disciple, but she's giving special treatment. Then, does our Snow Sword sect still have any rules to speak of? Shui Jianfeng glared and said righteously, Sect leader, great elder, it's still uncertain whether Long Long has leaked our sect's mental cultivation method to outsiders. Now is the most critical time for her to break through to the Golden Core realm. Everyone knows that once the first attempt fails, the difficulty of the second attempt will increase exponentially. If we forcefully interrupt it at this time, it's almost like killing a super genius. For the sake of the sect, please be careful. Su Xiaodong could only plead with the two of them. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope I can continue to break through to the 515 red envelope list. On the 15th of May, the red envelope reign will be able to give back to the readers and promote the works. Being together is also love. I'll definitely do my best. Chapter 53-47. Here's today's update, and at the same time, I'm pulling votes for the Chidian 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes, and the votes will also be given some coins. I beg for everyone's support and appreciation. I think. Chi Chinchio hesitated for a moment and said somewhat unbearably, why don't we postpone it? It's not too late to confront her face to face after she breaks through to the Gold Core stage. What do you think, Sect Master? In the end, before Hong Qingyuan could express his opinion, Shui Jianfeng had already taken the lead and slammed the table, saying unscrupulously, Great Elder, I think you're really too old and muddle-headed, aren't you? If someone makes a mistake, we must immediately convict them as a warning to others. This is not a child's play. This is a matter of principle, and it concerns the survival of our entire Snow Sword sect. Do you think that a matter of principle can be discounted and negotiated? Chi Chinchio's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Even Hong Qingyuan had never dared to speak to him in such a tone, let alone a mere young junior. However, although Shui Jianfeng's words were unpleasant to hear, every word was reasonable, and he really couldn't refute it for a while. Everyone's eyes then focused on Hong Qingyuan again. At this time, it was up to him, the sect master, to make a decision. Hong Qingyuan was very embarrassed. This problem was even more difficult for him than letting Shui Jianfeng be the executive deputy sect master just now. He knew very well that it was unrealistic for him to forcibly suppress the matter of the executive deputy sect master. After all, The other party was a gold core perfection expert with a promising future at such a young age. Instead of blindly suppressing him, it was better to go with the flow. At worst, he could help Bing Wuching next and let the two of them balance each other. However, regarding Long Lung's matter, he couldn't go with the flow. That was very likely to destroy a future pillar. However, Xue Jianfeng was stubbornly clinging onto the matter and even claimed the righteous cause. As the sect master, he couldn't ignore it. What should he do?
Tap, tap, tap.
Hong Qingyuan tapped the table. His expression was unfathomable. No one could tell what he was thinking. After a long time, he slowly said, "The executive vice sect leader's words are reasonable." That one sentence made Su Xiaodong feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Xue Jianfeng and his father Xue Liping's lips curled up. However, before they could laugh out loud, Hong Qingyuan immediately added, "However, the matter of leaking our sect's mental cultivation method is still not conclusive after all. Cold is at most a suspect. She can't be considered guilty yet. Therefore, we still have to consider for her and postpone the face-to-face confrontation." That's not appropriate, is it? Xue Jianfeng's face darkened immediately. This was a choice forced by helplessness. There was no other way. If she was asked to send a message to Cold, she would naturally be careful. At most, she would give a gentle reminder, but would not forcefully interrupt. In this way, the damage to Cold would not be so great. If it were someone else, it would be a big trouble. No. Xue Jianfeng stood out directly to stop them. He snorted and said, "She is Cold's master. Who knows what she will do in this? What if she takes the opportunity to collude with Cold? Let me do it. If you want to stop me, you can try to stop me." As soon as he said that, everyone was stunned. Xue Jianfeng's unreasonable level was far beyond everyone's expectations. For a moment, no one dared to stop him. In terms of strength, the only one present who could compete with Xue Jianfeng was Hong Qingyuan. However, since Xue Jianfeng had already said so, as the sect leader, how could Hong Qingyuan dare to take the risk? If they really turned hostile and started a fight, the entire Snow Sword sect would be in chaos. However, if they did not stop him, Xue Jianfeng would definitely not give up this excellent opportunity to attack Cold. A good super genius might be destroyed in his hands. If Cold was found to be innocent, it would be too late for regrets. While they were in a dilemma, a delicate figure stood in front of Xue Jianfeng without hesitation. It was Su Xiaodong. "Do you want to die?" Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Although Su Xiaodong was Long Lung's master, he was only the lowest-ranked alternate elder in terms of status. In terms of strength, he was only at the early gold core stage. What did he have to stop him? It's going to be 515 soon. I hope to continue to charge into the 515 red packet ranking. On the 15th of May, the red packet rain will reward the readers and promote the works. Every piece is love. I'll definitely do my best. Chapter 53-48. Here's today's update, and at the same time, I'd like to solicit votes for the Chidian 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes, and the votes will also be given some coins. I beg for everyone's support and appreciation. Su Xiaodong did not speak. She knew that it was useless for her to say anything at this time. She could only express her determination with actions. For Long Lung's sake, she would not give in even if she was beaten to death. "Okay, I'll fulfill your wish." A brutal killing intent suddenly surged out of Xue Jianfeng's body. This scene really shocked everyone present. Even Hong Qingyuan and Qi Qianqiu's expressions changed. This guy must be crazy. Could it be that he really dared to kill people in this conference hall? Compared to the shock of everyone, Su Xiaodong bore the brunt of it at this moment. Facing the oppression of a great perfection gold core realm master at close range, she, who was in the early stage of the gold core realm, was in a precarious situation. Once the opponent made a move, it would not take a second move to kill her. However, Su Xiaodong still did not give in. Xue Jianfeng could not help but laugh. He immediately unsheathed his long sword and stabbed it straight at Su Xiaodong's throat. The sword was so fast that Su Xiaodong had no time to dodge it. Hong Qingyuan and the others were too far away. At this time, even if they wanted to help, it was unrealistic. In everyone's eyes, she was now a dead person. For a moment, everyone's eyes changed again and again when they looked at Xue Jianfeng. Previously, they thought this guy was just arrogant, but now they felt a real tremor from their bones. Killing people because of a disagreement, this guy was simply a demon. At this time, no one paid attention to Su Xiaodong anymore. She had been shrouded by the shadow of death. No one could save her from Xue Jianfeng's sword because Hong Qingyuan, who had this ability, had given up trying. As a result, Xue Jianfeng's sword stopped abruptly midway. Everyone was stunned at the same time. Everyone was a little incredulous. Could it be that this guy had found his conscience? But then they suddenly realized that Xue Jianfeng's face was extremely ugly at this time. It did not look like he had found his conscience and stopped voluntarily. In fact, his long sword was not stopped by him at all. It was blocked by a thin layer of ice out of thin air. Yes, it was just a thin layer of ice. At first glance, it looked like a layer of ice that could be pierced with a finger, but it actually blocked Xue Jianfeng's long sword. Who is it? Xue Jianfeng was almost roaring these 4 words. One must know that he was prepared to kill Su Xiaodong in front of everyone to establish his prestige. Therefore, he didn't hold back at all in his previous attack except for not using his trump card. However, his attack was still blocked by a thin layer of ice. How could he endure this? Me. A calm voice came from outside the door. Then, a figure walked in, causing everyone's eyelids to twitch. The temperature of the entire meeting hall instantly dropped. The person was Bing Wuqing. You, aren't you in seclusion? Xue Jianfeng was dumbfounded. The reason why he had deliberately chosen this time to make trouble was not only because today was the regular meeting of the Elder Council, but also because Bing Wuqing was in closed-door cultivation. At this time, no one could stop him. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, it would be a waste of effort. He could scare people like Hong Qingyuan, but how could he scare Bing Wuqing? I'm out for a walk when I'm happy. What can you do about it? Bing Wuqing glanced at him expressionlessly. Then, she looked at Su Xiaodong. Seeing that he wasn't injured, she turned back and continued, You seem to be very awe-inspiring to kill someone in front of all the higher-ups of the Elder Council. Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but choke. Logically speaking, he and Bing Wuqing were experts of the same level and had the same background. There was no reason for him to be afraid of her. However, in fact, Bing Wuqing's strength had always been deeply ingrained in his heart. Instinctively, he didn't think he could defeat her, especially when his attack just now was superb. He had no confidence in front of Bing Wuqing. Suddenly, Xue Jianfeng's expression changed. He looked at Bing Wuqing with shock and anger in his eyes. The scene just now made him think of an extremely embarrassing but logical possibility. During this period of time, she had completely digested and absorbed the divine sense grass. Now, she was the strongest expert in the gold core stage. Although it had only been half a month, there was very little information about the divine sense grass. No one knew how long it would take to absorb half a stalk of divine sense grass. Half a month was completely possible. Otherwise, the scene just now couldn't be explained at all. They were both experts in the great perfection of the gold core stage. How could she block his attack so easily? The strongest expert in the gold core stage. This was the only reasonable explanation. What? You just pulled out your sword and killed people. Now you've become mute and can't speak? Bing Wuqing walked forward and sat down in the empty seat next to Hong Qingyuan, ignoring everyone's reaction. From the beginning to the end, her attitude toward Xue Jianfeng was not so much contempt, but disregard. It seemed that she didn't take him seriously at all. The feeling of being ignored immediately enraged Xue Jianfeng. He gritted his teeth and growled in a low voice, That's my seat. Your seat? Bing Wuqing was stunned. She turned to look at Hong Qingyuan and said, Does he have a special position? He even has a special seat? It was just approved today. He's the new executive deputy leader. Hong Qingyuan explained. He was as surprised as everyone else. He thought to himself that Bing Wuqing was really Xue Jianfeng's nemesis. Last time, she made Xue Jianfeng speechless. This time, when Xue Jianfeng flew into a rage, he was forcefully suppressed by her again. It was amazing. Executive Deputy Leader? What the hell is that? Bing Wuqing was a little confused. Xue Jianfeng had made up this term for himself. Before this, there was no such position in the Snow Sword sect. She had never even heard of it. Humph, the executive deputy leader is second only to the sect leader. He's the second most important person in the entire Elder Council. You can't just sit in this position casually. Bing Wuqing, don't be too arrogant. Xue Jianfeng snorted coldly. Hong Qingyuan and the others had strange expressions on their faces when they heard this. Arrogant? How could you have the nerve to say such a thing? Is that so? Bing Wuqing didn't comment. She continued to look at Hong Qingyuan and said, "Can I ask? Who was the one who suggested that he be the executive deputy leader?" Everyone looked at Xue Jianfeng. No one said a word, but their eyes said it all. You suggested it yourself? Even Bing Wuqing, who was usually expressionless, couldn't help but feel a little strange. She complained, "You made yourself the executive deputy leader? How shameless are you?" "I deserve it. What can you do about it?" Xue Jianfeng snorted angrily. He walked to the front and curled his lips. "Get out of my way. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope to continue to hit the 515 red envelope list. On May 15th, the red envelope rain will reward the readers and promote the work. It's love too. I'll do my best." Chapter 53-49. P.S. Here's today's update, and at the same time, garnering votes for Chidian's 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes, and the votes will be rewarded with coins. Begging for everyone's support and appreciation. Deserving of it? Bing Wuqing's expression became more and more strange. She looked at Hong Qingyuan and the others and said, "He's a fool, and you guys are playing along with him. When did you guys become so playful?" Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. Although Bing Wuqing's words weren't very respectful, the truth was that they had been kidnapped by Xue Jianfeng and forced to acknowledge him as the managing deputy sect leader. After all, Xue Jianfeng was a golden core perfected cultivator. "What did you say?" Xue Jianfeng was completely enraged. He was afraid of her strength, but it didn't mean that he only dared to act like a coward in front of her. If he was really cornered, he would also turn hostile, sneaking around behind my back and baring your teeth at me. Where did you get your confidence from? When she said this, Bing Wuqing didn't even look at Xue Jianfeng. The disdain was almost obvious on her face. When Xue Jianfeng heard this, he was instantly enraged. However, when he thought that the other party was very likely to be the strongest Aurus core expert in the legends, he didn't dare to act rashly. After all, he hadn't been overwhelmed by anger yet. He could only suppress his anger and clench his teeth as he said, "From what you're saying, could it be that you want to snatch the position of deputy sect master from my hands?" Bing Wuqing snorted and said disdainfully, "I'm not interested in such a stupid position." Bing Wuqing, don't go too far. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid that he couldn't beat her, Xue Jianfeng would have killed this dead-faced bastard with a sword. Wait, don't be impatient, both of you. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Hong Qingyuan quickly stepped forward to mediate. If he really let Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng fight like this, although he could sit on the sidelines and watch them fight, then the situation would be completely out of control. If 2 Golden Core perfected experts really fought, even he wouldn't be able to stop them easily. After all, he was the sect leader. Hong Qingyuan's words were more or less effective. Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng stopped fighting. Her gaze then landed on him. "With the 2 of your superb strength, it is reasonable for you to bear heavy responsibilities. Now that Jianfeng is already the deputy sect leader, Wu Qing should also arrange a position of equal strength to show fairness. Originally, because Wu Qing was in seclusion, I was going to postpone the discussion on this matter. Now that Wu Qing has come out of seclusion, how about we settle it together today?" Hong Qingyuan said. He had been regretting it ever since Xue Jianfeng had flipped out. Now, Bing Wuqing had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and interfered. Even though Xue Jianfeng was also somewhat condescending, it was a good thing for him. It was just nice for him to keep Xue Jianfeng in check, lest Xue Jianfeng become unruly and out of control. Equally matched positions? Bing Wuching raised her brows slightly. The managing vice sect leader is second only to the sect leader. He is undoubtedly the number 2 figure in the Elder Guild. There's no such thing as an equal position. Xue Jianfeng was extremely displeased when he heard that. The title of managing vice sect leader was not something that he had come up with on a whim. He had racked his brains for it so that he could surpass Bing Wuching and be on par with her. Wouldn't he have wasted all his efforts? Positions are all created by people. Before today, I had never heard of any managing vice sect leader. Isn't it still here now? Qi Qianxiu sneered. He, as the great elder, was supposed to be the second in command. Now, not only did the managing vice sect leader appear out of nowhere, even Bing Wuching was about to climb over his head. He felt really upset. But then again, it was not that he was blind to the bigger picture. In this situation, he was definitely on Bing Wuching's side. After all, it was better to have someone to keep her in check than not. Then tell me, what other position can be on par with the managing vice sect leader? Xue Jianfeng said disdainfully. Well, Qi Qianxiu pondered for a moment, then said, since there's already a managing vice sect leader, why don't we have a first vice sect leader? First vice sect leader? Xue Jianfeng frowned. He scolded, Great Elder, have you gone senile? The managing vice sect leader is already the number 1 vice sect leader. What first vice sect leader? That's not the same. The managing vice sect leader is the number 1 vice sect leader. Who said that both positions must be held concurrently? The second elder chuckled. The other elders who had the right to speak also chimed in. Since there was already a managing vice sect leader, they did not mind having another first vice sect leader. It would be perfect for Bing Wuching and Xue Jianfeng to fight amongst themselves. They were more than happy to sit on the sidelines and reap the spoils later. Preposterous. Xue Jianfeng was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He hated Bing Wuching again. If it were not for her, he would have succeeded in killing people to establish his dominance. These old farts would not have dared to pick a fight with him. What do you think? Hong Qingyuan looked at Bing Wuching. At this point, Xue Jianfeng's attitude was obviously irrelevant. With all of them pushing for it, as long as Bing Wuching herself agreed, the first vice sect leader position was already set in stone. Even if Xue Jianfeng and his father Xue Liping joined forces, they would not be able to stop it. Is it appropriate for something like this to happen without me, the managing vice sect leader's approval? Xue Jianfeng was still making his final struggle. In the end, Bing Wuching glanced at him indifferently and said disdainfully, It's none of your business. Now that I'm too lazy to attack you, you'd better get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Humph, what a big tone. I'd like to see it for myself, Xue Jianfeng said as he suddenly drew his sword again. Without hesitation, he soared into the sky and launched a powerful attack from above. His sword fell from the 9 heavens. Everyone, including Hong Qingyuan, turned pale with fright. This guy was really a lunatic. Not only did he attack Su Xiaodong just now, but now he even dared to attack Bing Wuching, who was also a golden core perfected cultivator. Moreover, he used such a trump card right from the start. The entire meeting hall was instantly in chaos. Everyone's first reaction was to dodge and retreat subconsciously. After all, swords had no eyes. Although they were all golden core experts, once they were hit by the aftermath of a golden core perfected cultivator's attack, it would be fatal. However, it turned out that they had been overthinking things. There were no aftershocks, nor were there any innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. In the face of Xue Jianfeng's powerful attack, Bing Wuching used only one move to easily end the battle. It was her signature move, the merciless ice stance. In the past, although the merciless ice stance had also exerted great pressure on others, it was ultimately just pressure. When faced with experts of the same level, it could at most have a limited effect. However, the scene that was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes right now had completely overturned all their previous understanding. Chapter 5350. Bing Wuching had only unleashed the merciless ice force, and Xue Jianfeng's entire body was covered in a thin layer of ice. He did not even manage to fully unleash the sword descends 9 heavens, and just like that, he fell stiffly from midair, like a lifelike ice sculpture. For a moment, everyone was dumbfounded. After a moment, Xue Liping suddenly reacted with a shout and rushed up to help the ice sculpture up. He asked in a terrified tone, "Feng are you all right?" This. Hong Qingyuan opened his mouth, but could not utter a proper sentence. Judging from Xue Jianfeng's power just now, he could tell that even if Xue Jianfeng's power was not as steady and experienced as his, he was definitely not weak among those in the Golden Core Great Completion. Yet, such a powerful existence was actually taken care of by Bing Wuqing so easily, without even batting an eye. Was she still human? It didn't make sense. Bing Wuqing was just a Golden Core perfected cultivator after all. How could there be such a huge gap between the same level? After a long while, the thin layer of ice on the surface of Xue Jianfeng finally broke. His face was pale, and he hunched his body in an extremely sorry state. Panting heavily, he stammered, "Most powerful Golden Core stage." As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone, including Hong Qingyuan, looked at Bing Wuqing with even more respect. Could she really be the legendary most powerful Golden Core expert? It wasn't impossible. Although neither Bing Wuqing nor Xue Jianfeng mentioned anything about the Divine Knowledge Grass, with their strength, it would be easy for them to participate in the primeval trial. It wasn't impossible for them to find the legendary Divine Knowledge Grass. And the overwhelming strength that Bing Wuqing displayed just now could only be explained by the fact that she was the strongest Golden Core expert. In the face of the subconscious reverence from the crowd, Bing Wuqing didn't care. She curled her lips slightly and said, "Who told me that she was the strongest Golden Core expert? Wasn't she?" Xue Jianfeng, who had finally managed to catch his breath, was stunned when he heard that. He assumed that since the other party had come out of seclusion, she must have used the other half of the Divine Knowledge Grass, which meant that she was naturally the strongest Golden Core expert. Was there anything wrong with that? Bing Wuqing smiled, which was rare, but it was a mocking sneer. "Why don't you feel it again?" "Feel what?" Before Xue Jianfeng could react, Bing Wuqing raised her hand slightly and unleashed her merciless ice force once again. A thin layer of ice instantly covered him again. However, with the previous example, Xue Jianfeng's reaction was extremely fast this time. He immediately unleashed his strongest protective layer of qi without any regard for the price. Even though he would inevitably be in a somewhat sorry state, he wouldn't be turned into a human-shaped ice sculpture without any resistance. After all, he was an expert in the peak of the Gold Core realm. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. "Only Issa." Xue Jianfeng pretended to be calm and wanted to mock him. However, before he could finish his words, his entire body suddenly trembled. His knees went soft, and he knelt down on the spot. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. No one would have thought that this guy would actually kneel in public. What the hell was he doing? Of course, Xue Jianfeng didn't kneel willingly. At this moment, his expression was incomparably sinister and conflicted, because what was trapping him wasn't just the thin layer of ice on the surface. It was the insides of his 2 legs that had been frozen. He had no choice but to kneel. That wasn't what shocked him the most. What really shocked him was that the merciless ice force that he sensed earlier was not the power of an expert in the Golden Core realm. It was clearly a level higher, an existence that was completely above the Golden Core realm. It was a nascent soul realm-old monster. Nascent soul realm-old monster? How could you be a nascent soul realm-old monster? Xue Jianfeng was practically going crazy. He couldn't react the first time because the other party hadn't used her full strength. But now, Bing Wuqing had used her full strength. His 2 legs were frozen to this extent and were almost crippled. If he still couldn't react in time, he would be too slow. What? Nascent soul realm-old monster? Everyone present, including Hong Qingyuan, was collectively shocked. Each of them looked at Bing Wuqing in disbelief. Just now, the range of the merciless ice force was controlled to be extremely small. Therefore, although they were very close to it, they didn't feel its power at all. They just assumed that it was the strongest Golden Core realm. Who would have thought that it was actually a nascent soul realm-old monster? But how was this possible? The birth of any expert in the nascent soul realm. That was a huge matter that would affect the entire structure of the small, immemorial underworld. And in the entire small, immemorial underworld, although there weren't as many experts in the Golden Core realm as there were dogs everywhere, the overall number was not small. Basically, any sect or clan of a high level would have a few or even a dozen of them. Snow Sword faction was considered very rare. If it were the top 4 sects and clans, they wouldn't even be able to count them with one hand. There were no less than 3 digits of experts in the Golden Core realm, and every single one of them had been scheming to break through to the nascent soul realm. But how many of them had succeeded in the end? The reality was that in the last 20 years, the number of experts in the small immemorial underworld who had recently advanced to the nascent soul realm was 0. Not a single one. Condensing the nascent soul sounded like a simple task, but the difficulty involved was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Just the nascent condensation golden core, which could only be obtained by luck, was enough to make everyone flinch. Even if they were lucky enough to obtain it, the entire breakthrough process would take at least a few years. How could it be so fast? Half a month ago, she was still in the Golden Core realm, but now, she had become a nascent soul realm old monster the moment she came out. What kind of heavenly book was this? But then again, if it had been someone else, they would not have believed it. But when it came to Bing Wuqing, Hong Qingyuan and the others really could not be sure. It was not just Bing Wuqing, but also Xue Jianfeng and Leng Leng. They could not see through these people. It had only been slightly more than a year since she started her training in the secular world. Yet Leng Leng had soared from the early stage of foundation building all the way to the foundation building perfected. This was unprecedented in the history of the small, immemorial underworld. But compared to the other two, it was still acceptable. Someone had provided her with elixirs, and she was naturally talented, so this could be explained. But Bing Wuqing had directly soared from the early stage of Golden Core realm to the Golden Core realm perfected. How could this be explained? One had to know that the Golden Core realm and the foundation building realm were 2 completely different concepts. Even if it was possible to achieve this by swallowing elixirs, where could so many golden cores and golden cores come from? Not even the entire small immemorial underworld had so many, right? That was not all. What made everyone even more speechless was Xue Jianfeng. This fellow had directly gone from the foundation building perfected to the Golden Core realm perfected. This was practically a breakthrough. Chapter 53-51. If one could succeed in reaching the Gold Core realm by simply taking a stroll in the secular world, then what was the primordial underworld? Most importantly, it was guaranteed to reach Gold Core consummation within a year. Was there any justice in this? Bing Wuqing wouldn't say these things, and neither would Xue Jianfeng. Even if Hong Qingyuan and the others were itching to know, they could only hold it in and not press them. After all, they were both Gold Core consummation experts. Only nascent soul realm experts were qualified to interrogate them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. In the end, they hadn't even figured out the matter of Gold Core consummation, and suddenly a nascent soul realm expert appeared. Was she crazy? However, the crowd's first reaction wasn't to believe her. Instead, they thought that Xue Jianfeng might have been scared out of his wits. He assumed that she was a nascent soul realm expert because he had been completely defeated by her. After all, it wasn't shameful for a Gold Core consummation expert to be defeated by a nascent soul realm expert. In the end, Bing Wuqing's next words made everyone completely dumbfounded. You only found out now? No one has such a slow reaction. The crowd gasped one after another. Everyone's mouth, including Hong Qingyuan's, opened so wide that a duck's egg could be stuffed inside. The same thing was written all over their faces. She really was a nascent soul realm expert? Hearing this affirmative answer, Xue Jianfeng's already pained expression became even more pained. He couldn't hold himself up anymore and collapsed to the ground, howling in pain. If she was just the strongest Gold Core cultivator, even if he wasn't as strong as her, he could still fight. But now, she had suddenly become a nascent soul realm expert. What could he do? He would never have guessed that the main purpose of Bing Wuqing's seclusion for half a month was not to get the half-consciousness grasp from him, but to get the supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pill from Lin E. In half a month, not only did she use up the half-consciousness grass, but she also used the supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pill to condense her nascent soul. Most importantly, she actually succeeded. Bing Wuqing's achievements in the primordial underworld could only be described as unprecedented. Even from Lin Yi's point of view, Bing Wuqing's innate talent was extremely important. Bing Wuqing's existence even reminded him of Long Rufin, the little brother he had just taken in on Heaven Stage Island. Long Rufin was the signature figure of the East Continent's Soaring Cloud Academy. There was no doubt that he was extremely talented. Of course, Long Rufin was an expert of the mysterious ascension stage, and the strength of the two of them was far from being comparable. But in terms of talent alone, Lin Yi felt that Bing Wuqing was at the same level as him. This was almost the highest level, or else he wouldn't have invested so many elixirs on Bing Wuqing for no reason. Although Lin Yi had the divine pesticide cauldron, as long as he had enough elixirs, he could have as many top-grade elixirs as he wanted. However, the landlord did not have any surplus food. If he really found a piece of trash and randomly threw elixirs at him, he would be struck by lightning. Sometimes, Lin Yi couldn't help but wonder if he could defeat freaks like Long Rufin and Bing Wuqing if he didn't have so many heaven-defying cheats. This was probably a huge suspense. Feng Er. Xue Liping was completely dumbfounded when he saw this scene. He quickly rushed over and picked up Xue Jianfeng, who was in pain. In the past, he, as the vice-sect leader, was definitely an incredible figure. But now that Xue Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing had risen to prominence, Xue Liping suddenly became insignificant. Today's events, other than echoing his son in the beginning, he was basically in the background. No one paid attention to him at all. It was only at times like this that he was able to get some screen time, but it was only a sad scene. Bing Wuqing, what did you do to my son? This is the Elders' Council, and he is the new executive vice-sect leader. Do you want to challenge the entire Elders' Council? Xue Liping questioned with a face full of grief and indignation. He didn't hesitate to put a big hat on Bing Wuqing. He wasn't too sure if the other party was really a nascent soul-old monster, but he had to say it. Everyone turned to look at them when they heard this. Then, two people immediately became the focus of attention. One was undoubtedly Bing Wuqing, and the other was Hong Qingyuan, who was supposed to be in charge of the situation as the sect leader. Hong Qingyuan didn't say anything. He looked at Bing Wuqing with everyone else. No one knew what he was thinking at this moment. Perhaps he was digesting Bing Wuqing's true strength, or perhaps he was thinking of corresponding countermeasures. After all, if the other party was really a nascent soul-old monster, how he should deal with her was not something he could decide alone. He had to be extremely cautious. Challenge the entire Elders' Council? Bing Wuqing looked at him, then at Hong Qingyuan and the others. She asked, according to what you're saying, when he attacked Elder Su just now, he also challenged the entire Elders' Council? Xue Liping choked. Under everyone's strange gazes, his old face flushed red. He tried to defend himself. That's different. Su Xiaodong offended his superior by standing in the way. This is a serious crime. Even if he was killed by Feng Er's sword, he deserved it. Blocking the way is offending your superior? Since when did our Snow Sword sect become so strict? Is it a new rule set by vice-sect leader Xue? Su Xiaodong immediately stood up and retorted. In the past, she might not have had the guts to do so. But now that she had a strong person like Bing Wuqing to back her up, she could finally vent her anger. Su Xiaodong, don't push your luck. Xue Liping suppressed his anger and glared at her. I think this sentence is more suitable for you and your son. This time, it was Bing Wuqing who spoke. She looked at them disdainfully and said, I'll say it here. In the future, no matter who opposes Long, that person will be my enemy. Don't talk to me about the sect's rules. I don't care at all. Remember, the outcome of going against me is death, unless you can survive under my hands. Her words made everyone break out in a cold sweat. It wasn't just Xue Liping and Xue Jianfeng. Even Hong Qingyuan and the others felt their eyelids twitching. Those who didn't know better would think that they had entered a mountain bandit's lair. Her words were too unbridled. But then again, if Bing Wuqing was really a nascent soul realm old monster, He really did have the right to say such things. One had to know that the rules of any sect were set by the nascent soul realm old monsters. Standing at the top of the immemorial underworld, they naturally had the right to do so.
Scram.
Bing Wuqing said the last word. Shui Liping wanted to stiffen his neck and continue to be stubborn, but after Shui Jianfeng, who was in great pain, growled at him, he immediately gave in. He didn't dare to say another word and quickly retreated with Shui Jianfeng on his back. Chapter 53-52. Just a moment ago, he was still flaunting his prowess as if from now on, the Elder Council would be decided by the person surnamed Shui. But now, in less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had already left with his tail between his legs. Wasn't the change in style a little too quick? No one spoke for a long time. Finally, it was Hong Qingyuan who broke the silence. That? Hong Qingyuan was just about to call Bing Wuqing by her name, but he thought that it would be overstepping his authority if she was really a nascent soul old monster. So, he could only say vaguely, "Please forgive me for asking, but have you really condensed your nascent soul?" This was a serious matter, and he couldn't afford to be careless. He had to brace himself and confirm it 100%. Otherwise, he would become a laughing stock. "Do you need me to show you?" As Bing Wuqing spoke, she released an unprecedentedly powerful aura from her body. This was different from the merciless ice force. Strictly speaking, the merciless ice force was an offensive technique that she could control at will. Moreover, with her current level of control, she was extremely proficient in it. Apart from the person herself, no one would be able to get a clear idea of what she was capable of, which was why they were suspicious of her. But at this moment, the aura was different. It was the most intuitive feeling. Everyone immediately understood that this was definitely a genuine original soul realm old monster. "Greetings, Grand Elder." Hong Qingyuan no longer had the slightest doubt. He hurriedly led everyone to pay their respects, not daring to show the slightest bit of neglect or disrespect. Regardless of Bing Wuqing's previous identity, and regardless of her seniority, according to the ancestral teachings, as long as there was someone in the sect who had advanced to the nascent soul realm, that person would automatically become the Grand Supreme Elder. Everyone, from the head of the sect to the ordinary disciples, had to pay their respects to her. Otherwise, it would be seen as deceiving her master. Bing Wuqing was not surprised by this. She nodded slightly and waved her hand. "Get up, all of you." "Thank you, Supreme Elder." Only then did Hong Qingyuan lead the rest of them to stand before Bing Wuqing respectfully, not daring to put on any of the usual dignified airs. Showing off in front of a nascent soul old monster was akin to courting death. This was a principle that even Shui Jianfeng knew. "Since you've given Shui Jianfeng the position of deputy sect leader, shouldn't you also give me a position?" Bing Wuqing asked casually. Huh. Hong Qingyuan and the others couldn't help but be stunned. He was already a Grand Elder. What position did he still need? "Is there a problem?" Bing Wuqing glanced at him. Please enlighten me, Grand Elder." Hong Qingyuan broke out in a cold sweat under his stare. Once a new nascent soul realm old monster appeared in any sect, he or she would basically go out to visit other sects and show his or her face. This was to show off his or her strength, and there were many rituals involved, so he or she must not be neglected. Otherwise, even if people seemed afraid on the surface, they would privately laugh at him or her for being a nouveau riche who didn't even know the basic visiting rules. "No, I'm just going to see someone. There's no need to go through all that trouble. By the way, when I'm not here, you guys look after Long Long. If anything happens to her before I come back, I'll hold you responsible," Bing Wuqing reminded them. Yes, Hong Qingyuan and the others were stunned. They didn't know why Bing Wuqing was taking care of Long Long so much, but since Bing Wuqing had said so, they had to protect Long Long even if they had to risk their lives. Otherwise, they would be going against the nascent soul realm old monsters. How many lives did they have? Fortunately, Shui Jianfeng had already suffered a great loss just now. The injury on his leg was normal, and he wouldn't be able to recover without a few months' time. Of course, if Hong Qingyuan and the others were really determined, It would be useless for Xue Jianfeng to act recklessly. Hong Qingyuan alone was enough to suppress him. Previously, they were just wary. But now that they had Bing Wuqing to back them up, there was nothing to be afraid of. One was a golden core perfected, and the other was a nascent soul realm old monster. There was no need to consider which side to choose. Bing Wuqing nodded, and immediately asked someone to prepare a snow sword sect's best flying spirit beast. Under the gazes of Hong Qingyuan and the others, it rose into the sky and soon became a black that disappeared into the horizon. Our snow sword sect is finally about to usher in a new era. Qi Qinxiu sighed, half gratified and half sorrowful. Chapter 53:53. However, things were different now. With the addition of Bing Wuqing, a nascent soul expert, the Snow Sword faction had two nascent soul old monsters. Even if this top-notch combat force could not be compared to the four major sects and clans, it was undoubtedly one of the best among the 10 minor sects and clans. In the past, although the Snow Sword faction status was not bad, it did not have much say in the Middle Island Alliance. From now on, this rule would probably have to be changed. Yes, the Patriarch's spirit is here. There is hope for our Snow Sword faction to prosper. Hong Qingyuan looked at the horizon, his eyes shining. Even though the sudden rise of Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng was a big problem for him, as long as he could handle them well, the strength of the entire Snow Sword faction would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. How could Hong Qingyuan not have any ambitions to become a sect leader? He had a premonition that the time for the Snow Sword faction to flourish had come. After leaving the Snow Sword faction, Bing Wuqing drove the Flying Spirit Bee straight to the North Island. The person she was going to see was naturally Lin Yi. Xue Jianfeng had already been crippled by him, and he had just said some harsh words in front of everyone in the elders' meeting. Before he left, he had specially reminded him. In his opinion, this was enough to complete the task that Lin Yi had given him before they parted. At least in the short term, no one in the Snow Sword faction would dare to provoke Cold, unless that person was crazy. Since Cold no longer had any worries, there was naturally no need for Bing Wuqing to stay in the Snow Sword faction. People like Xue Jianfeng might enjoy the feeling of being the highest supreme elder, but obviously, Bing Wuqing was not. She had no interest in this kind of thing. Now that she had successfully broken through to the nascent soul realm, the first thing she had to do was to see Lin Yi, in addition to completing the task that Lin Yi had entrusted to her. There were two reasons. The first was to show her loyalty. It was all thanks to Lin Yi that he was able to become a nascent soul cultivator in such a short period of time. If it weren't for Lin Yi constantly giving him these top-quality pills, then it would simply be unimaginable. Therefore, he had to express his heartfelt gratitude and show his loyalty to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he became arrogant and thought that he was strong enough, then he wouldn't need to fear anyone anymore. Then he would definitely die a miserable death. Since Lin Yi could create him, he could naturally destroy him easily as well. Bing Wuqing's heart was as clear as a mirror. Don't forget that Lin Dongfang had personally planted a spell in his body. The second reason was to ask Lin Yi about the next step of her mission. Lin Yi had spent so many top-quality pills to make him a nascent soul old monster who stood at the top of the immemorial underworld. Bing Wuqing believed that it was not as simple as asking her to protect Cold. Intuition told her that Lin Yi must have a deeper reason for doing so, and it must be related to the core. It was nothing in the past, but now that she had become a nascent soul old monster, every move she made was being watched. Bing Wuqing knew that she had to think carefully before she did anything, and most importantly, she had to figure out Lin Yi's attitude. Otherwise, if she accidentally went against Lin Yi's wishes, it would be an undeserved disaster. Apart from that, Bing Wuqing actually had another selfish motive. She knew very well that only by behaving obediently would she be able to continue obtaining supreme-grade golden nascent condensing pills from Lin Yi. Although nascent soul old monsters were already standing at the pinnacle of the immemorial martial world, to her, the early nascent soul stage was just the beginning. Following a freak like Lin Yi, Bing Wuqing never thought that the nascent soul stage was the end. In fact, whether it was Lin Yi or the core, both were enough to completely overturn her previous view of the world. To quote a saying, her future goal must be the sea of stars, and the nascent soul stage was just a starting point. But then again, going to the North Island so openly was equivalent to exposing his identity to some people, such as Xue Jianfeng, whom she had just taught a lesson to. Of course, Bing Wuqing wasn't stupid. She had already weighed the pros and cons before she did this. In fact, the fact that she was Lin Yi's follower could no longer be kept a secret from the moment she successfully condensed her nascent soul. Even if she didn't go to the North Island to meet Lin Yi, Xue Jianfeng and those people from the core could easily deduce that there was something fishy behind it. After all, the core didn't have the nature-defying technology that allowed her to condense her nascent soul so quickly. In fact, as Bing Wuqing had expected, Xue Jianfeng was the first to realize that she was an expert of the nascent soul stage. That was why he admitted defeat and retreated so decisively. One had to know that Bing Wuqing, who was in the same camp, and Bing Wuqing, who was in the opposite camp, were two completely different things to Xue Jianfeng. The former usually wouldn't do anything to him, and he could still brace himself to save face, but the latter would really kill him. Xue Jianfeng was arrogant and presumptuous, but he wasn't stupid at all. After realizing this inside story, he didn't hesitate to give up on trying to be brave, because that would definitely be courting death. Feng how's the injury on your leg? After Xue Liping carried Xue Jianfeng back to the cave abode, he looked at his son's blood-soaked legs helplessly. I won't die. Xue Jianfeng gritted his teeth and endured the intense pain. Bing Wuqing didn't kill him, but his legs were frozen. But this wasn't an ordinary freeze. It was an injury caused by the advanced version of Heartless Ice Force. It wasn't easy to treat the injury in a short period of time, and if it wasn't treated properly in time, it could easily leave indelible sequelae. His legs might even be disabled forever. This was a devastating blow to an expert of the Golden Core perfected realm who was determined to advance to the next level. This injury is no small matter. I'll call the people from the medical hall over for you, Xue Liping said after some thought. There's no need. The medical hall is filled with Qi Qianqiu's people, and now that Bing Wuqing is in power, those good-for-nothings won't do their best to treat my injuries. They might even do something behind the scenes. Xue Jianfeng reached out to stop him. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't want to be treated, but he didn't want to be examined. If the poisonous gas in his body was found, it would be troublesome. Then what should we do? We can't just bear it like this, can we? Xue Liping said with a frown. He had always been very concerned about this son of his. Now that Xue Jianfeng had suddenly become a Golden Core perfected realm expert, and his strength was a notch higher than his father's, he was naturally even more concerned. How about this? Help me send a message to the people outside. They'll have a way to deal with this, Xue Jianfeng said, enduring the pain. People outside? You mean? Xue Liping was stunned. Chapter 53-54. The reason why the bespectacled professor thought highly of Xue Jianfeng and even came forward to fight for him to be specially trained was not only because of his talent and strength, but also because his father was the vice leader of the sect. Once he could rope him in, with Xue Liping's connections, many things would be easier to handle, and it would save them a lot of trouble in the early stages of entering the immemorial underworld. Of course, Xue Jianfeng did not forget this most important task. In fact, from the first day he returned to the Snow Sword School, he had already been doing his father's work. It was just that this matter was of great importance, and he could not make up his mind until he saw how terrifying the center was. After all, this was a matter of life and death for their Xue clan. If they succeeded, then they would soar to great heights. But if they failed, then they would definitely suffer a huge loss. This was related to the future and fate of the entire clan. So Xue Liping had no choice but to be careful. Xue Jianfeng was not in a hurry. He knew that this kind of thing needed a process of acceptance. Besides, even with the center's methods, entering the immemorial underworld was not something that could be done in a day or two. During this period of time, they would at most send a small advance team over to get a feel of things. It was not the time to make a big move yet, so he was not in a hurry to get his father to choose a side. But now that things had happened so suddenly, and Bing Wuqing's sudden rise had completely disrupted their rhythm, She was a nascent soul realm old monster. In this situation, if they did not find the center to discuss this quickly, Xue Jianfeng felt like he was a rooster waiting to be slaughtered. If Bing Wuqing was unhappy, she could take his life at any time. Xue Liping hesitated for a moment with a gloomy expression, but finally stomped out and prepared to contact the center's advance team according to Xue Jianfeng's instructions. It was not that he did not believe in the center's strength. In fact, with Xue Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing as two living examples, he no longer had any doubts about the center's great strength. He just had not clearly weighed the pros and cons. Now that Xue Jianfeng was seriously injured, and Bing Wuqing was so overbearing, if he chose to retreat unconditionally, the other party would definitely take a mile after taking an inch. Xue Liping could see clearly that his future days would only get harder and harder. So, unless he gave up his son, Xue Jianfeng, and was willing to be a coward. Otherwise, he had no other choice. Looking at Xue Liping's back as he left, the corners of Xue Jianfeng's mouth curled into a strange smile for some reason. It wasn't because his father had finally made a wise decision, but because of Bing Wuqing. Indeed, Bing Wuqing, who had suddenly become a nascent soul-old monster, was a huge threat to him. But at the same time, it also exposed the other party's background. Since he had betrayed the core, then no matter how strong he was already a dead man. Xue Jianfeng did not doubt this point at all. Although Xue Jianfeng's legs were heavily injured by the other party's merciless ice force, in reality, he couldn't help but feel excited and even elated. Bing Wuqing was a traitor. This meant that he had one less strong competitor in the fight for resources in the center. In terms of talent and strength, the others were no match for her. At the very least, he'd already become the only target that was worthy of the center's fostering, and the benefits he represented was obvious. To a certain extent, this was simply a blessing in disguise. North Island, Blue Cloud Sect. Under the gaze of a crowd of disciples, a giant snow eagle descended from the sky. Everyone looked at it and started talking about it. Although all the flying spirit beasts of the ancient sects were mainly spirit birds, that was only for the ordinary elders and disciples, and some of the higher-ups with special status. The flying spirit beasts they used were often the symbolic spirit beasts of their respective sections. For example, Hong Zijuan, the leader of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, rode on a spiritual eagle. Snow Eagle was the symbolic spirit beast of the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island. Seeing Bing Wuqing dismount from the back of the Snow Eagle, everyone looked at each other. Although the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island and the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island were both part of the 10 small sects and families, one belonged to the North Island Alliance, while the other belonged to the Middle Island Alliance. They had almost no contact with each other, and the higher-ups of the sects rarely visited each other. What was going on today? May I ask who you are? A supervising disciple walked up and asked. Snow Sword Sect. Bing Wuqing. Bing Wuqing said lightly. Hearing this name, everyone was shocked. Bing Wuqing was a real celebrity in the small Jianghu of the primeval times. Back then, she was the most famous person in the Foundation establishment stage, and almost all the disciples of the primeval sects looked up to a genius. Even in this remote North Island, she was well known. But why would such an influential figure suddenly appear here? Your Excellency, what brings you to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? The supervising disciple asked, neither servile nor overbearing. I'm here to see someone. His name is Lin Yi, and he's the primeval uncle master of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Bing Wuqing spoke bluntly. Since she had come to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island publicly, there was no need for her to be secretive. Even if she publicly revealed her relationship with Lin Yi, she believed that Lin Yi wouldn't mind. Primeval Uncle Master? The supervising disciple was slightly stunned. He thought that since she had come from afar, she was most likely here to visit on behalf of the Snow Sword sect. He didn't expect that she was here to see Lin Yi. Is there a problem? Looking at his weird expression, Bing Wuqing frowned. The supervising disciple hesitated. Nowadays, Lin Yi, the so-called primeval Uncle Master, was a highly controversial figure to the entire Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Because he stood on the opposite side of highest Elder Chenjie, except for Xianjie and the others, The other disciples basically stayed away from him. After all, in their opinion, going against a nascent soul realm-old monster was simply courting death, and there was no possibility of winning. Go and ask for instructions. I'll wait. Bing Wuqing didn't know what happened to Lin Yi and the others, but judging from the supervising disciple's reaction, she had vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Of course, before figuring out the specific situation, she couldn't act rashly. She could only wait and see. All right. The supervising disciple didn't dare to be negligent. Even if Bing Wuqing didn't say it, he had to report this kind of thing as soon as possible. How to deal with this uninvited guest wasn't something that a mere supervising disciple should worry about. Soon after, a few high-level gold core cultivators of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island hurriedly showed up. Their leader was none other than Lu Pingon, the direct disciple of highest elder Chanjiu. Chapter 53-55. After all, he was not only powerful and experienced, but more importantly, he had the solid backing of the highest elder. In this aspect, the other gold core stage seniors could only look up to him. Looking at this scene, Bing Wuqing became more and more suspicious because she didn't see Xianijia. Logically speaking, Xianijia was the one who had the closest relationship with Lin Yi among all the senior members of Green Cloud sect in the North Island, and he had also dealt with her before. Logically speaking, Xianijia should be the most suitable person to receive her at this time. So why didn't he even show his face? Bing Wuqing, my little friend, you've come from afar. Please forgive us for not going out to welcome you. Lu Pingon smiled and cupped his hands in greeting, behaving extremely politely. At least from his point of view, he was already very polite. Even if Bing Wuqing was also a golden core expert, she was still a junior to him. Addressing her as a young friend was already a form of flattery. Little did he know that Bing Wuqing was not even in the gold core stage now. He wasn't giving her face at all, but was trying to flatter himself. It's okay. Bing Wuqing didn't care about this at all. Her reputation meant nothing to her, and she had never considered such things. She went straight to the point and said, "Can I pay a visit to your Grandmaster Linny now? May I ask if there's anything special, my little friend Bing Wuqing? Is this your personal wish, or the wish of your sect?" Lu Pingon asked tentatively. "Personal," Bing Wuqing said directly. Lu Pingon raised his eyebrows, looked at the other gold core stage seniors beside him, and breathed a sigh of relief. If Bing Wuqing came to visit Lin Yi on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, it would be a big problem for them. After all, it was likely that Lin Yi had a close relationship with the Snow Sword sect. If they wanted to deal with Lin Yi, they would have to consider the feelings of the Snow Sword sect. Fortunately, this was Bing Wuqing's personal matter, so there was nothing to worry about. "I'm sorry, but Grandmaster Lin Yi is currently in seclusion. I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. Please go back." Lu Pingon immediately asked her to leave without hesitation. Seclusion? Bing Wuqing frowned even more. If she hadn't sensed something strange just now, she might have believed it. But at this moment, his intuition told him that there was definitely a problem. As an expert, especially a super genius like Bing Wuqing, her instincts had always been extremely sharp. Not bad. Grandmaster Lin Yi has been in seclusion ever since he arrived here, and no one dares to disturb him. Hence, if my young friend Bing Wuqing wishes to visit him, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for the next opportunity, Lu Pingon said with an apologetic look on his face. He looked rather sincere. Unfortunately, Bing Wuqing obviously wouldn't give up so easily. He glanced at Lu Pingon and said, "Take me to the ascending heaven cliff." Huh. Lu Pingon was stunned for a moment. The other party's tone really confused him. Rather than saying it was a request, it sounded more like a condescending order. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? It was understandable that a talented genius like Bing Wuqing would be a little arrogant, but the problem was that this wasn't the Snow Sword sect, but the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. She had come all the way to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island to act like a tyrant. Didn't he think about the consequences of his actions? Moreover, even if Bing Wuqing's attitude was better and she made a request in a proper manner, Lu Pingon would never agree, because the request itself was already out of line. Although the Ascending Heaven Cliff was mostly used to imprison special people, it was a place of great significance to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Apart from the high-level golden core cultivators, even the disciples of the sect couldn't easily approach it, let alone open it to an outsider like Bing Wuching. Moreover, Lin Yi was currently imprisoned on the Ascending Heaven Cliff. Now was the time for the standoff, so how could Lu Pingon allow an outsider like Bing Wuching to see him? I'm sorry, but the Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even the disciples of the sect can't approach it casually. Your request is a little too much. If it weren't for the other party's identity, Lu Pingon would have definitely started to chase her away without hesitation. However, she was after all a genius who used to be unparalleled in the Snow Sword sect of the Middle Island. If he embarrassed her too much, it would be equivalent to humiliating the entire Snow Sword sect to a certain extent. He didn't want to cause such unnecessary trouble. The Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area? Bing Wuching raised her eyebrows. The more the other party tried to deny it, the more suspicious she became. However, she couldn't just fall out with him before figuring out the specific situation. She glanced at Lu Pingon and said, "Does this mean you can't make the decision?" The corner of Lu Pingon's eye twitched, and an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. What kind of contemptuous look was that? She was too condescending. That's right. Lu Pingon still didn't fall out with her. Holding back his anger, he said, "If you want to let people enter the Ascending Heaven Cliff forbidden area, you have to at least have the right to decide. However, it just so happens that our sect leader and deputy sect leader are both busy, so we can't do it for the time being." Lu Pingon was already very well-mannered to be able to say this much. If it were anyone else, even if they didn't fall out with her face-to-face, they would definitely leave in a huff. Bing Wuching, you're just a new junior. Why are you acting like a big boss here? What about the Grand Supreme Elder? Your Grand Supreme Elder should have the right to do so, right? Take me to him, Bing Wuching said smoothly. What? Lu Pingon and the others were collectively dumbfounded when they heard this. They looked at each other for a moment, then said, "You want to see our Grand Supreme Elder?" "Yes. You're not going to tell me that your Grand Supreme Elder isn't here either, are you?" Bing Wuching asked casually. "The Grand Supreme Elder is here, and he does have the right to do so, but he's the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. How can you, an outsider, meet him just because you say so? Do you think that your Grand Supreme Elder will agree to meet anyone who comes and asks to see your Snow Sword sect's Grand Supreme Elder?" Lu Pingon's face was tinged with sarcasm, and the other Gold Core stage higher-ups also looked contemptuous. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Asking to see the Grand Supreme Elder as soon as he opened his mouth? Did he really think that the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island belonged to his family? That depends on who it is. Bing Wuching wasn't angry about this. People like her, who were extremely rational and pragmatic, rarely got angry with others. What was the use of getting angry? Besides, they were on a different level now, so she wouldn't get angry easily. Chapter 53-56. If you're here on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, we can still consider it. But since it's your own business, there's nothing more to say. That's all I have to say. We've already given you, and your sect, a lot of face. Goodbye. What if I don't go? Bing Wuching looked indifferent. Hearing that, Lu Pingon and the others' faces darkened. Their tone changed, and they said, "Those who come from afar are guests. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island is not a place without rules. But if you insist on challenging our sect's bottom line, don't blame us for being impolite." As soon as he said that, several high-level golden core cultivators immediately surrounded Bing Wuching. The other disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island also became nervous. Without any orders, they spontaneously surrounded her from all directions. They all knew that Bing Wuching was a golden core expert. Under normal circumstances, ordinary disciples wouldn't dare to get too close to her. But this was the territory of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and Lu Pingon and a group of even more powerful high-level golden core cultivators were here. Of course, they had nothing to be afraid of. After all, if a fight really broke out, they wouldn't have to do anything. At most, they would just support her. After the fight, they could brag to others that they had fought Bing Wuching. That would be a good topic of conversation. I don't want to fight. Even though Bing Wuching said so, her hands didn't move at all. However, the materialized merciless ice force had already seeped out of her body in an instant. The group of Golden Core experts, including Lu Pingon, didn't even have time to react before a thin layer of ice covered their bodies. As for the ordinary disciples on the periphery, they weren't affected. If such a strong, ruthless ice momentum was used on them, a large number of them would die today. That would be a massacre, and there would be no room for redemption. Even so, it was enough to frighten everyone present. They didn't dare to act rashly anymore, especially the high-level Golden Core cultivators led by Lu Pingon. Although the ice only covered the surface of their bodies, it wasn't as serious as it was against Xue Jianfeng. However, their strength could not compare to Xue Jianfeng, a Golden Core perfection expert. The strongest among them was Lu Pingon. The strongest among them, Lu Pingon, was only at the peak of the late Golden Core stage. Being covered by the ice, everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. The piercing coldness seemed to come from the depths of their souls, making them tremble in fear. Under such circumstances, they would be lucky if they didn't kneel down, let alone fight back. What do you want to do? Lu Pingon knew that he still wouldn't give up. Although he was as scared as the others, this was the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even if Bing Wuching was really more powerful than them, he didn't believe that Bing Wuching would dare to make a move here. She would be making an enemy of the entire Blue Cloud clan of the North Island, or even the entire North Island Alliance. Who would have the guts to do that? I've said it just now. I want to see your Grand Supreme Elder, Bing Wuching said impassively. You think you can see him just like that? Lu Pingon was so angry that he gritted his teeth. His current state was one of anger and humiliation. That's right, the other party's sudden move had indeed shocked him. He had initially thought that Bing Wuching was just a junior in the early stage of the Golden Elixir realm. He had not expected her to be such an expert. He finally realized that he had underestimated his enemy. But so what if he underestimated the enemy? Did he really think that he would be able to see the Grand Elder just by showing off a bit of his strength? What did this guy think the North Island Blue Cloud sect was? Did he really think that this was a place where he could behave atrociously? Bing Wuching glanced at him and said a few words, which was rare for her. People are generally divided into two types. Some people have foresight, and some people only realize it after a while. But I found out that you're the third type. What do you mean? Lu Pingon was stunned. I didn't realize it, Bing Wuching said impassively. Lu Pingon was speechless for a long time. They all said that Bing Wuching was a heartless person. Why was she so vicious today? Lu Pingon was about to retort when an inexplicable and powerful aura suddenly spread out from Bing Wuching. This time, everyone's expression changed at the same time. They were even more frightened than when they were frozen by the merciless ice momentum. This aura. She was clearly a nascent soul realm old monster. Lu Pingon almost peed his pants. The expression on his face was brilliant. He would never have thought that Bing Wuching, a young junior, was already a nascent soul realm old monster at the top. You're really Bing Wuching? Lu Pingon asked a stupid question subconsciously. Of course, the other party was Bing Wuching. Even if she didn't say her name, they could still recognize her. After all, she was the leader of the younger generation back then. The higher-ups of the primeval sects would more or less pay attention to her. However, Lu Pingon couldn't believe the fact that Bing Wuching had become a nascent soul realm old monster. After all, it was too shocking. Bing Wuching ignored him and said directly, "Do I have the right to see your highest elder now?" Everyone looked at each other, then turned their heads stiffly to look at Lu Pingon. When they were frozen just now, they thought that they could still fight with the other party with the advantage of numbers and home advantage. But now that they found out that the other party was actually a nascent soul realm old monster, this absurd idea was immediately thrown out of Java. Against a nascent soul realm old monster, it would be difficult to win even if there were another 40 of them, let alone the 4 Golden Core experts present. With the intrinsic difference between the golden core and nascent soul realm, it was not something that could be made up for with numbers alone. There was only one way to deal with a nascent soul realm old monster, and that was to let the nascent soul realm old monster of their own sect fight in person. It was also because of this that the status of nascent soul realm old monsters in the primeval underworld was so high that it directly became a key indicator of a sect's status. There was nothing that could be done about it. An archaic sect with a nascent soul old monster as its overseer was indeed stronger than one without one. If they really fought, a nascent soul old monster was enough to annihilate any ordinary sect. These ordinary sects didn't have any means to fight back, so what could they do? I didn't expect your excellency to already be the highest elder of the Snow Sword sect. We've been disrespectful. Lu Pingan's expression was extremely ugly, but he had no choice but to force a smile. He smiled apologetically and said, "The highest elder is the highest representative of a sect. Since it's a matter of the highest elder, it's also a matter of the entire sect. Please wait in the guest hall. I'll go and report to my highest elder right now." After saying that, Lu Pingan did not dare to delay any further. He gestured to the other Golden Core experts to entertain Bing Wuqing, while he hurried to the top of the mountain. But don't forget, other than Bing Wuqing, there was another veteran nascent soul old monster in the Snow Sword faction. If he came looking for revenge, how was he going to deal with them? In the small, immemorial underworld, every nascent soul old monster was equivalent to a nuclear weapon in the secular world. They definitely couldn't be attacked easily. Otherwise, a careless move could lead to a world war that wouldn't end until one side was wiped out. For every sect involved, that would be an unbearable disaster. You're the Grand Supreme Elder. Are you going to say that you don't have this authority? Bing Wuqing asked with a frown. Haha, my young friend. You must be joking. Of course I have this authority. However, it just so happens that Lin Yi is in seclusion at the Ascending Heaven Cliff right now. Even I can't rashly interrupt him. Otherwise, there might be unimaginable consequences. In my opinion, if my young friend really wants to see the immemorial martial granduncle, why don't you wait a little longer? Qin Jiao tried to beat around the bush. Wait. Bing Wuqing raised her eyebrows. That's right. My young friend, you've never been to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. During this period of time, you can travel around and experience the local customs of the North Island. When the immemorial martial granduncle comes out of seclusion, I'll send someone to inform you immediately. What do you think, my young friend? Qin Jiao suggested. Chapter 53-58. Broadcast, follow, Chidian reading, and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't snatched red packets since the new year can now show their skills. In the eyes of an extremely pragmatic person like him, there was no such thing as sentimentality. He only cared about the pros and cons. As long as the pros outweighed the cons, he would act without hesitation. The reason why he didn't take any action now was because he hadn't figured out the situation yet, so he couldn't act rashly. After much persuasion, Bing Wuqing was finally persuaded to leave. Of course, she didn't really leave, but was just temporarily stabilized. Chunju even specifically asked Lu Pingan to arrange an extremely secluded residence for her, afraid that she would do something out of control if she interacted with the ordinary disciples. After all, the destructive power of an original infant stage expert was not to be underestimated. Keep a close eye on him. If he does anything, report to me immediately. Chunju exhorted. Initially, Lin Yi was his greatest threat, but now it had become Bing Wuqing. After all, the latter was a true nascent soul expert, and she was an existence that could truly threaten him. How do I keep a close eye on him? Lu Pingan's face was bitter. It would be fine if she was a golden core stage expert, but she was an original infant stage expert who could easily flatten him with one hand. How could he keep a close eye on her? You don't have to keep an eye on his every move. Just make sure that the other disciples of our sect don't come into contact with him, especially not let him get close to Sky Cliff. Chinju also knew that this request was a little too much, but it had to be done. He didn't know what the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Linny was, but neither of them was easy to deal with. If they really joined forces, even Chenju would have a headache.
Yes.
Lu Pingon could only reluctantly agree. It was not very realistic for him to keep a close eye on Bing Wuqing with his strength, but he could change his way of thinking and keep an eye on those suspicious people who might get close to Bing Wuqing, such as Xianijia. Little did he know that when he and Chenjio were delaying Bing Wuqing, Xianijia, who got wind of the news, had already gone to Skycliff and told Linny about Bing Wuqing's visit in full detail. Not bad. Linny smiled faintly after listening. Although Bing Wuqing's quick advancement to the nascent soul realm was somewhat unexpected, he did not find it strange. After all, he was the one who had given her the supreme-grade golden elixir of condensing nascent soul realm. What he meant by not bad was actually the attitude that Bing Wuqing had displayed during this trip. She was showing her loyalty. Condensing the nascent soul so quickly is only not bad? Xianijia was dumbfounded. In the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island, apart from Lin Yi, he was probably the one who knew Bing Wuqing the best. A year ago, she was at the early stage of Gold Core, just like him. But in the blink of an eye, she had become a Yuanying realm old weirdo. How could he bear this? I mean, his attitude is not bad, Linny explained. Even though he had long known that Bing Wuqing was someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances, this fellow had not become arrogant at all after she had formed her nascent soul. She was actually so obedient, which was really rare. It was obvious that all those elixirs had not been wasted. He's one of us? Xianijia's eyes widened when he heard this. He had been wondering why Bing Wuqing had to come to see Lin Yi, but now, he suddenly understood. He looked at Linny with even more awe. He could even tame a genius like Bing Wuqing. Granduncle was really unfathomable. That's right. Linny nodded. Since Bing Wuqing had come to the North Island, there was no need to hide this kind of thing anymore. It was more meaningful to announce it openly. With such a powerful follower, not only could it greatly deter the enemies, but it could also improve their self-confidence and cohesion at the same time. It was killing two birds with one stone. Granduncle is mighty. As expected, Xianijia was very excited and sincerely admired Lin Yi. He felt lucky that he had bet on the right person. Since Lin Yi could even tame a Yuanying realm expert like Bing Wuqing, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with Chanjio, who was also a Yuanying realm old weirdo. He wouldn't have to be so worried in the future. Linny looked indifferent. At his level, it would be too degrading for him to be excited about such a small thing. Granduncle, what should we do next? Should I contact Bing Wuqing? Xianijia asked in high spirits. Do you think you can contact her? Linny glanced at him. It seems a little difficult. Xianijia felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. He could easily figure out that Lu Pingon would do everything possible to prevent him from getting in touch with Bing Wuqing. Moreover, he wasn't strong enough to force his way in. It was easy to talk about contacting Bing Wuqing, but it was very difficult to actually do it. It's not urgent. Don't be impatient. Linny smiled. Although they had been in a stalemate during this period of time, strictly speaking, they had always been the ones who had the upper hand. Now that Bing Wuqing was here, it was even more so. Chunjio should be the one anxious now, not him, so there was no need to panic at all. They could just wait and see. All right. Xianijia was a little resentful. It was rare to have someone as powerful as Bing Wuqing here. He thought it was just the right time to wrestle with Chanjio. For a native of the small Jianghu world like him, the deterrence of a nascent soul-old monster was deep-rooted. Even though he had the upper hand in the situation before, he always felt frightened, and always felt that his side wasn't strong enough. Now that he finally had a nascent soul stage expert who was on par with him, his mood was completely different from before. Seeing this, Linny couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect that Xianijia, who had always been a good guy who only knew how to protect himself, would have a belligerent side. It was really unexpected. But then again, although the situation forced him to stand on the opposite side of Chinjiu, Lin actually didn't want to make a big fuss. After all, His relationship with the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was not fake. It would be best if it could be resolved peacefully. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Bing Wuching had stayed in the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island for a few days. Because of Lu Pingan's deliberate arrangement, she rarely interacted with the ordinary disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and had no chance to directly contact Xianijia. But with her strength, if she really wanted to do something, Lu Pingan couldn't stop her at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to fall out with Chenjiu for the time being, Bing Wuching would have already broken into climbing Heaven Cliff. Even if she chose not to move for the time being, it wasn't difficult for him to find out some news. After a few days, he had a general understanding of Lin Yi's situation. Judging from the current situation, although Lin Yi was trapped in climbing Heaven Cliff, he still had the upper hand in this confrontation with Highest Elder Chenjiu. At least Chenjiu didn't dare to do anything to him. However, Lin Yi also couldn't get out of the Reaching Heaven Matrix. This was probably Chenjiu's only chance to win. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.